In the realm of internet horror, there is nothing that is quite as fascinating to me as analog horror. And most of you probably know what that is, but for those who don't, I'll give a quick explanation. Analog horror refers to a project in which one of the aspects of the horror derives from an analog format. Most often this takes the form of VHS tapes. The horror can be derived from the content itself or from an apparent corruption of these VHS tapes. And if I'm not explaining this well, don't worry, you will be well acquainted with analog horror by the end of this video. Some early examples of analog horror on YouTube include the likes of Local 58 and Gemini Home Entertainment, but as of 3 years ago, there was kind of a revival of analog horror on YouTube. And one of the projects at the forefront of this revival was the Mandela Catalogue. Created by Alex Kister, the Mandela Catalogue was and continues to be revolutionary in the field of online horror. Many of the elements or tropes associated with analog horror were either pioneered or popularized by this very series. And as we will see, the Mandela Catalogue is very, very interesting, because it did start out as an analog horror, but at this point has become so much more. As Alex has evolved as a creator, the way he chooses to tell his stories has also changed. And it's to the point where he has gone far beyond the title of analog horror at this point. And so today I wanted to talk about the horrifying story of the Mandela Catalogue. We'll also be constructing a timeline of the events of the story, because like any good online horror series, none of the pieces we're given are in order. And I'll also be showcasing how Alex's visual direction has changed over the past 3 years. And so with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and let's get into it. Okay. That was weird. Must just be the wind. I'm the only one in this house right now, so that better have just been the wind. The Mandela Catalogue, as of today, has 16 videos in its catalog. It's officially been divided into 2 acts, which I have outlined here, and Act 3 is on the way. And a couple entries that I have listed here actually exist on a separate channel, but we're gonna get to that later. And I'll be going through the series in order using a playlist that is publicly available on Alex's channel. So of course, we'll be beginning with the first video, Overthrown. And before we start, if you have never seen anything of the Mandela Catalogue before, and at any point in this video you think that this sounds really cool, then I cannot stress enough, click off this video and go watch the Mandela Catalogue for yourself, and then come back and watch this video. I truly believe that this series is something special, and I would hate to spoil your experience with it by having this be the first time that you've ever watched it. Unless of course you're like me and it's a lot less spooky to watch someone talk about a spooky online series than have to watch it yourself. In which case, you're not alone. I've been watching Wendigoon for years. And a final thing that needs to be given here right out the gate is a massive disclaimer. This series does delve into some heavy subjects, but the most prevalent among them is the topic of self-buy, a self-exit game. And this is not just 1 or 2 mentions of the subject, it is a very prevalent element of the whole series. And so if that's something that you just don't want to interact with at all, I totally understand. This video may not be what you're looking for then. And so with all that said, let's get to the first video, Overthrown. And yes, it is supposed to be spelled that way, and yes, we will find out why in a minute here. The footage we see here is from the Beginner's Bible, a very real series that adapted famous biblical stories for children. These are the kinds of videos that I would watch all the time in Sunday school as a kid. And this story in particular is the Nativity story. In other words, the story about the birth of Jesus and the miracle surrounding it. But as we will see in this universe, it takes a very different turn. The shepherds are in their fields keeping watch over their flocks by night, when suddenly a great light comes from above and an angel of the Lord appears to them. The angel tells them that the Christ has been born and that he can be found laying in a manger in Bethlehem. And with that, the angel and his hosts fly away, but as they do, a weird glitch happens with the tape. And after this moment, absolutely nothing in this story is normal. And I'll elaborate more on this after the video's done, but what I'll say for now is that at this moment, the angels were either corrupted or, better yet, usurped by some external force. This is the last time that we see any adaptation of real angels in the Mandela Catalog. Then bright text appears on the screen saying to rejoice, for Jesus is born. And then a very jarring text-to-speech voice introduces Mary, the woman chosen by God to give birth to Jesus. In this version of the story, she is visited by an angel, but the name of this angel is redacted.
I am the angel Gabriel.
So, yeah, probably not an angel. Apart from that horrifying glimpse of this thing, the angel's face remains redacted for the rest of this interaction, which honestly is more horrifying to me somehow. It also refers to itself as the angel Gabriel, and this is a very important character in the Mandela Catalog, so from here on out, I'll be referring to this being as Gabriel. And Gabriel says that he brings Mary good news, but when he opens his mouth to speak,
I've come to bring good news.
News? For me? Whatever God wants, I will do.
Hidden in the subtitles of the video during this spot is a message encoded in binary. And I'll read the translation here, but just to be warned, the Mandela Catalog as a series, as a whole, delves into subject matter that could be considered blasphemous, but I'll talk more about that at the end of Overthrown. The message reads, I am the one true Savior. I must reverse the delusion. Joseph is next. And with that, Gabriel departs. And we then see Joseph, the man who is engaged to Mary. But as the scene fades in, we see that the angel Gabriel is right outside Joseph's window, whispering to him while he sleeps. The previous time this thing spoke, it used the angel Gabriel's voice, but here it uses a completely different voice.
I will fool the shepherds. I will know their greatest fear. I will know your greatest fear. Wake up, Joseph. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake.
Whatever is masquerading around as Gabriel now, it is fixated on knowing people's fears. And we will see that theme pop up again in subsequent episodes of this series. And after this, we cut again to the shepherds in their fields. It seems whatever glitch happened with the angels at the beginning caused the nativity story to repeat itself, but this time, instead of the heavenly hosts visiting the shepherds, it's just Gabriel. Rather than a great light in the sky, all light and color is drained from the world. Gabriel appears in the sky, his face is censored, and he no longer has wings. This is not the angel Gabriel. This is the usurper. And instead of bringing the great news that Christ is born, he gives them the message that he is the one true Savior.
Do not be afraid, my dear shepherds. I have great news. I am your true Savior.
And it claims to know everything about humanity and what makes us human. The censor over Gabriel's face fades, and then we get the first true horror of the series.
I know everything about what makes you human. I know what you love. I know what you dread.
Jesus loves me, yes.
false angel then takes on this twisted visage, presumably something much closer to its true form. This is one of the more horrifying things in the Mandela Catalogue, even beyond just the implications of this scene that I'll get into in a minute here. The true horror for me is that this is meant to be a real account of the nativity story, but told through a children's VHS tape. Meaning everything that we see in this episode is a child-friendly account of the story. And so if everything that we just saw actually happened in the universe of the Mandela Catalogue, then what is this thing? If this is a child-friendly version of what the false Gabriel looks like, then I never want to see what the real Gabriel looks like. Just ever. And there's so much to unpack about it, but we're not done yet. And after that horrific vision, we see big red text in the sky. This is the voice of the false Gabriel. It says, "Can't you see? I deceived them. Such weak minds." We then get another message in smaller white text. It's unclear who is talking, but it says, "I am bound to chains on my ankles that grow heavier with every step. The infinite amount of sand will be my tomb, and my foolishness will be my legacy. If there is a God, please help me." Then the Looney Tunes outro music plays, signaling the end of the cartoon. Now, that was a lot right off the bat. This episode is very important because it sets up the premise and the history of the Mandela Catalogue. This series takes place in a world where Jesus has been replaced. This false Gabriel has somehow twisted the past, making himself the true savior. A being that can take on the visage of another as well as twist its own appearance. A being that preys on people's fears and can get inside their head, giving them messages that torment them day and night. I think you know exactly where this is going. And if you know the series, you absolutely know where this is going. The identity of the false Gabriel is up to speculation. Unless, of course, you have the captions turned on when you're watching the video. Immediately after Gabriel reveals his twisted form, this text appears in the subtitles, a quote from Dante's Inferno saying, "How frozen I became, and powerless then. Ask it not, reader, for I write it not, because all language would be insufficient. I did not die, and I alive remain not. Think for thyself now. Hast thou aught of wit, what I became, being of both deprived?" As people who watch my Shin Godzilla video no doubt know, this quote is taken from the exact moment in the final circle of hell when Dante looks upon the visage of Satan himself. The story and the premise of Mandela Catalogue and what makes the series so horrifying is it takes place in an alternate history where Satan successfully usurped religion. The nativity story almost took place as normal, but some interference that we may never get specifics on allowed Satan to reverse the story, making himself the focus of religion, or just Christianity specifically. It's unclear. And this is why I preface saying that the Mandela Catalogue could be considered blasphemous, but I disagree for a couple reasons. Firstly, it's a fictional story. Alex isn't trying to make some commentary on religion in the real world. And secondly, it's pretty obvious from what we've just seen and what we will continue to see that this takeover is a bad thing. I would absolutely consider it blasphemous if in this series Satan took over as the root of Christianity and it was seen as a good thing, but it's very explicitly shown that this is bad for everyone involved. And now I have established that I firmly believe that the false Gabriel is actually Satan in disguise, but because he's called Gabriel throughout the series, I will be referring to him through the rest of this video as Gabriel, but just know that that means Satan, basically. And so in light of this horrifying revelation, then who's the second voice, the one bound to chains on his ankles? First of all, as a little behind-the-scenes fact, according to Alex himself, this quote is an excerpt from a poem he wrote as part of a school project. This poem would then go on to inspire this video, Overthrown, and that would of course launch the Mandela Catalogue as we know it today. And as for who the voice is, At this point, we have no idea. One possibility is that this is the now mortal Jesus, doomed to walk the earth in his prison of flesh. But I don't think this is the case because the voice specifically says if there is a God, and I'm pretty sure Jesus knows that God exists. And I do have a theory, but it ties into a later video, so I'm just gonna save that for now. And to hopefully alleviate some of the confusion for newcomers to the series, I'll be writing on this whiteboard lists of important characters that you'll need to keep in mind as we go through the series. I've divided the board into two sides. We have the humans and a censored category that we will find out about in a second here. And for now, the only name that you really have to keep in mind is that of Gabriel. And I put Satan in brackets because obviously this is not the real Gabriel. Now, what does a world where Satan and his demons have replaced religion and roam freely around the world look like? I'm so glad I asked that on your behalf, because we are now moving to the 20th century with the Mandela Catalogue, Volume 1. The original volume to date has gained 13 million views and was responsible for making the Mandela Catalogue as popular as it is now. However, since we are talking about the story of this series, I am going to be going over the events of the restored edition Alex released years later. The two versions do have definite visual differences, and Alex also used the opportunity of this re-release to retcon some ideas in order to tell the story that he wants to tell. And so let's get into the restored edition of Volume 1. Volume 1 is a collection of different VHS tapes, each with its own narrative, but each gives us a glimpse into the terrifying world that our characters live in. The opening is a clip from the 1925 version of The Phantom of the Opera, but we then immediately transition into a government PSA. This is very similar to those Cold War era government PSAs, especially with the very patriotic American music in the background. This announcement is coming from the United States Department of Temporal Phenomena. Who are they? No clue, maybe we'll see them later. This PSA is informing the American public that they are currently under attack from beings known as alternates. These beings are viewed as so dangerous to the public that the only semi-effective ways of combating them are remaining inside with your doors locked and having a firearm on you at all times. But how do you know that you've seen an alternate? Good question. Based on their description, alternates can either take on the exact appearance of anybody, including you, or they can take on these twisted human characteristics, being humanoid in appearance, but with very unnatural features. If an alternate does manage to get into your home, the best thing you can do is to avoid contact at all costs. Alternates are capable of utilizing what the department vaguely refers to as psychological warfare as a means of breaking down their victims. Now you might be hearing this and thinking to yourself, man, that situation seems pretty hopeless. What's something that I can remember if I encounter an alternate? According to this tape, you should follow the THINK principle. That's right, there's an acronym. T, tell an authority figure about your encounter. H, hinder the alternate's movements. I, identify the threat level. How do you do that? I don't know, good luck, I guess. N, neutralize the alternate if it's safe to do so. And finally, K, know your place in reality. And as this final card is shown, some of the text glitches and cuts off to where the screen just says to know your place. This is one of the first instances of something we will see where alternates have the ability to corrupt these VHS tapes. And in this moment, they are sending a message to Americans everywhere to know their place. And as fans of the Mandela Catalogue will know, this scene played out a lot differently than in the original version. In both cases, it's very clear that the alternates are tampering with these tapes somehow, so it is unclear how much of this information, if any, can be trusted. It then says to know your enemy, to which it shows side-by-sides of people and the alternates who have replaced them. Some alternates assimilate very well with only minor differences, and some are... well, a little more noticeable. And already we are seeing some similarities to Overthrone, where these beings can either fully assume another person's identity or take on twisted characteristics of that person. The next tape comes from the Mandela County Police Department regarding an incident involving an alternate. And who better to talk about that than a friend of mine who works in that county.
Detective Johnny Marlowe, MCPD. Now I know what you're thinking. Last time you saw me, I looked different. When you sign a Hollywood deal about your life story, turns out they don't tell you that they're gonna cast someone way more attractive than you. But enough about me, because we're talking about the incident that occurred on September 13th of 1992. First item of evidence, a phone call between the individuals Mark Heathcliff and Cesar Torres. Cesar apologizes to Mark for calling so late at night, but he found his mother laying unconscious on the floor.
She's knocked out cold and I have no idea why. I'm on my way to the ER, but could you do me a favor? Yeah, of course. What is it? I just need you to come over and turn on the cameras we have set up. You know the ones that we installed after we were robbed?
Man, I'm just going through accents like nobody's business. His mother screamed just before he found her, so he's wondering if there's any suspicious peoples lurking about. Mark asks Cesar if he's had the doors and windows to the house locked, just like the broadcasts about the alternates have been telling people for years.
Yeah, that's the weird part. Maybe she saw something? I don't know.
Mark also makes the foreboding statement that he's not going to spend too much time in Cesar's house because Cesar knows how he feels about that house. It seems that there was something wrong with Cesar's house, something that made Mark Heathcliff nervous. Cesar specifies to get a good look at the back door before the call ends. Our second item of evidence from the night is CCTV footage taken from the house of Cesar Torres. We see angles of the back hallway, down a staircase, the living room, and the outside of the house. We hear Mark closing the door on his way out, and the next recorded instance comes from 3:31 a.m. Outside, a figure walks up to the house. And when we come back to that shot later, the figure is gone, but the door is now open. And then from within the house, we hear a voice.
Where'd you go, Mark?
A massive shape moves in front of the camera, and then the footage cuts out. There is a very good reason that Mark was afraid of Cesar's house. Based on all the evidence gathered, we concluded that an alternate had been residing in the house of Cesar Torres. And the third item taken in as evidence is a notebook from the house of Mark Heathcliff entitled Reassurances. Why did he need reassurances, you may ask? Well, because of something that we're about to see. His first entry is the quote, "It followed me home, Cesar. I do not want to see what is on the other side, but it has been days and nobody has come to help me." The alternate followed Mark home and for days afterwards began tormenting the kid. And the fourth item taken in as evidence, a camcorder, shows us exactly what torment went on in Mark's house.
I have a gift for you. I have a present. I have a surprise.
I cannot stress enough, this is not a glitch or an artifact in the tape. This is an alternate trying to mimic the sound of a human voice. The alternate roamed throughout the house making these noises in an attempt to lure Mark out, and this process continued for days on end.
Where'd you go, Mark?
Imagine trying to sleep or even find some moment of peace while that thing is outside your door. And it never stops. It never ends. Never. Eventually, Mark gave up, and he opened the door.
You fucking bastard!
Finally fed up, Mark picked up a gun and did what he felt he had to do.
Mark's fate was cut from this version of Volume 1, but in the original version, this torment continued until ultimately Mark decided to take his own life. And this death is still canon to the series, so I'm including it here. The next tape also comes from the police department regarding telecommunication. And this detail is very important. This VHS tape was shared internally in the department and was not released to the public. This tape is intended for any employees of the department handling 911 calls if emergency responders are backed up. And most of the tape proceeds as normal. If the police are needed, then inform the police. If there's a fire, then inform the fire department. If there's a medical emergency, then contact the hospital. And then there is a fourth type of emergency called an encounter, presumably an encounter with an alternate. And it tells the trainee not to help a caller reporting an alternate encounter, no matter how frantic their screams are. You are to reassure the caller that help is on the way, but hang up the phone once the caller has stopped responding. In other words, when they're dead. And when this video first came out, initially the community took this to mean that the police and the alternates were in cahoots, but I don't think that's the case. I think this is mainly meant to exemplify the hopelessness of the alternate situation. The police will not respond to calls regarding an alternate because there is literally nothing that they can do. If they did respond to an alternate call, not only would the caller die, but any units that they send to the location would be lost as well. And so they just pacify the caller, reassuring them that help is on the way if they can just hold out a little longer, and then once they're dead, just hanging up. All of the public-facing media regarding alternates has said that the alternate threat is stoppable if you stay out of their way or take measures yourself with a firearm. But based on all the internal tapes we know from the police department, this is a lie. And after this, the tape then cuts to a different educational video. It begins by saying that in 1982, there was a 95% increase in cases of MAD. MAD is yet another acronym standing for Metaphysical Awareness Disorder. This is a mental disorder, and according to the tape, it is caused by exposure to verbal information that is not desired to be known. In other words, being unwillingly exposed to forbidden knowledge. Not just an evil secret like declassified CIA documents, but cosmic truths that could unravel your perception of reality. Truths so horrific that in 97% of cases, patients will ultimately take their own lives. But that 3% survival rate gives enough hope that MAD could be prevented or treated in some way. And this videotape provides some guidelines for avoiding exposure to MAD. The first is avoiding all religious practices or philosophical implications. And another tip is remaining mentally stable by looking after friends, family, and loved ones. And then the final tape of Volume 1 is a toddler stress assessment video. This is a tape given to parents to test the stress levels in their child. The child is meant to be placed in front of the TV, and the parents are meant to record their child's responses to the stimuli that they are shown on screen. And Section 1 is a series of audio cues. They play bird sounds, the chime of a music box, and finally, the crying of a child. And then in Section 2, they play a series of video clips. The first clip is from a scene from the original 1922 film Nosferatu, The clip in question is of Count Orlok, a very unnatural looking person, entering the room of the protagonist of the story, Hutter. This, of course, is an allegory for the alternates, these supernatural, twisted creatures that enter people's homes. And just as another quick plug, I did in fact do a video on Nosferatu, so once you're done watching this video, you should go and check that out. It's pretty cool. I'm so excited for the Robert Eggers movie. I've seen all the trailers and I cannot wait. Christmas can't come soon enough, man. I know it's spooky season, but Christmas can't come soon enough. The next clip is from a scene from another old movie.
Tomorrow, Mr. Havisham will take you to your grandfather, and you will live with him at the castle. But I shall not go with you.
And the important thing to take away from this clip is the idea of a child being taken away. That becomes very important later in the series. The clip is abruptly cut off and replaced by another piece of police evidence regarding the case of Mark Heathcliff, a story that he told when he was 4 years old. His dad hadn't checked under the bed last night, and so he got out of his bed to go to his mother's room. And he described a scary sounding knock at the door. And in going down the stairs, he passed an open door with a pitch black room beyond it. And he was nearly at his mother's room when he saw a stranger standing there in the corner of the room. And as soon as he saw this man, he fell asleep. And we then get this clip from an old Mickey Mouse cartoon. In it, a hooded figure enters Mickey's house and slowly begins creeping towards him. And just when the figure is about to take off its hood, this is the man that Mark saw in the house all those years ago. And that is the end of the Mandela Catalog, Volume 1. I asked at the end of Overthrown what a world where Satan has superimposed himself as the head of religion would look like. And here in Volume 1, we get at least a glimpse of what that does look like. If Gabriel really is Satan, then the alternates are his army, the demons. And they have been loosed on earth to feed on people's fears and to torment them into taking their own lives. And they do this by appearing as friends or loved ones. They can even appear to look like you or take on these uncanny, twisted features. And then they expose people to information that drives them to the point where they are willing to hurt themselves. In the video about metaphysical awareness disorder, they say one of the most effective treatments is to avoid religious or philosophical thought. I believe that this is because at least one aspect of the psychological torture or the information that's not desired to be known is the knowledge that Satan has usurped religion. And so that's why religious people are particularly susceptible to these attacks. This is not the only form that MAD will take, but it is definitely the most cosmically terrifying. The alternates appear unstoppable, and the people installed in public positions to keep us safe keep providing the public with solutions, fully knowing that none of them will work. And in the story of Mark Heathcliff, it seems that even at a young age, he was constantly being observed by the alternates. And later in life, he went to his friend Caesar's house to turn on the security system, and an alternate followed him home. This is kind of cheating because it was explicitly laid out in the original Volume 1, but I do still believe that at the time that Caesar called Mark, Caesar was in fact an alternate. And he was luring Mark to the house because they had already picked him out as their next victim. And trust me, we will see more about the tragedy of Mark Heathcliff later on. And in terms of the visual style of this video, both this and the original Volume 1 are prime examples of the analog horror genre. Many aspects of this video, including some of the themes as well as the visual elements, would become essentially the template for many analog horror series that would come in the future. I'm pointing this out now because in future videos we will watch as Alex's visual style changed throughout the years. And now I can officially say that the two categories of characters that we're going to be introduced to in the series are humans and alternates. The main humans introduced to us in this episode are Mark Heathcliff and Cesar Torres. I also have Cesar on the alternate side because yeah, he's definitely an alternate at this point. The human Cesar is more than likely dead. And on the alternate side, we have a couple important arrivals. The first is the guy from the beginning of the video who has been called N by the community. And he will be making an appearance in the future, so keep him in mind. And the other one, and possibly one of the most important alternates in the series besides Gabriel himself, is the Intruder, who has the other name of Six. But throughout the video, I'm gonna keep calling him the Intruder because that to me is a lot more menacing, at least currently, than Six. Although apparently the number 6 is very important to his character later in the series. Supposedly. That video hasn't come out yet. Speaking of which, we are on to the next video in the series, Intruder Alert. And immediately we are plunged right back into the thick of it.
I am inside your home.
This face is very important to the horrific events that we will see in a bit. We are then shown a program made by the Mandela County Child Endangerment Awareness Association, which, man, that is a mouthful. It opens by talking about the activities typically employed by parents to entertain their children. And when it gets to the TV, it pauses, and then that same face appears. The main takeaway right now is to remember that this face appears in the television, most likely to children. It warns parents about the kind of content that their kids could be exposed to on the TV, and then
your children may be viewing elements of violent content, sexual content, graphic content, scary imagery.
This is presumably talking about the alternates. They are able to interfere with analog technology so easily because they exist on the various spectrums that broadcast television finds itself in. And so it's important to note here that primarily CRT televisions from back in the day can be used by the alternates to manifest into the real world. And they can also corrupt broadcasts with their supernatural powers, I guess. Another voice interrupts, saying that if you hear your child screaming and crying in front of the television, to wait until the screaming stops before entering the room. I'm not a parent myself, but that sounds like bad advice. The mother in this scenario enters her child's room, but the child is no longer there. The crib is empty and there is no trace of the child in the room. And then she looks at the TV and sees the same face grinning back at her. This face is another manifestation of the alternates, and as we will see, it has somehow abducted this child. The mother backs away from the TV, remaining still for a moment before beginning to rise up. And to those of you who may be thinking that people don't normally do that, your confusion will soon be over. Almost immediately, the lights come on and we see that the mother, distraught at the sight of her missing child, has hung herself. And the crib has also transformed into a coffin, which to me means that the child is most certainly dead. We then cut to an emergency broadcast and we realize that the situation is a lot worse than we think. According to the broadcast, it seems that across 4 counties, including Mandela County, 3,426 children have gone missing in this way. Whatever this alternate is, it executed the mass kidnapping of thousands of children in an instant. If the main goal of the alternates is to 1, feed on people's fears, and 2, psychologically torture them into taking their own lives, imagine the psychological toll of thousands of children going missing from their homes. And in response, this emergency broadcast is saying to keep your child away from any television screen or reflective surface. We then cut to a tape of the police investigation of the self-delete that we saw earlier. September 1922, a 10:56 report from Mandela County.
Neighbors of the home called in noise complaints, including a childlike crying and a loud crack heard from the neighboring house. Keep in mind, this house was abandoned following the incident. There shouldn't be anybody in that house. An investigator was sent to the residence to conduct photo and video surveillance. The investigator only managed to take this photo before experiencing an overwhelming sense of dread and fleeing the scene. And so another officer went in the house and set up a camera to take photos automatically every 5 minutes. The first image seems normal, and if you look in the bottom right, you can see that we have labeled each photo with the appropriate threat level. And the next image was probably cause for concern. And the next image was, you know what, actually I like that last image. Can we go back to the last image? All joking and bits aside, I love that in this image the threat level is listed as vague. It's incredible. The next photo is spooky, but a bit better. And in the next photo we see the face that was responsible for the mass abduction that occurred. Another hilarious note is that the threat level is marked as apparent. Like, yeah, it sure is. And for the next photo, a huge portion of it has been redacted with a note saying, "Victim's corpse is seen being tampered with by invisible force." So yeah, I don't think I need to explain what that means. And the next image is perfectly fine, which I appreciate. Our final conclusions: the man in the photo is as of yet unidentifiable, but the MCPD has ruled out the possibility of it being an alternate.
So either I'm wrong and this guy is something completely different, or Mandela County Police really have no clue what an alternate is. None of these photos are to be released to the public on the orders of Lieutenant Davis. Lieutenant Davis is a very, very important character who we will see later in this series. And that is the end of Intruder Alert. This incident will become very important later in the series because how could it not? And this is one thing that I love about analog horror. Damn, is that just the wind? Hang on. I don't know what I expected to see. It's pitch black outside. I am legitimately recording this at night. Probably the most psychologically damaging thing I could have done. The story is not spelled out for you and nothing is told linearly. We are instead given these dots and clues with the expectation that in future installments we will have enough pieces to connect these dots. I just used 2 analogies at once there. That was crazy. Right now we know in broad strokes that the alternates are these supernatural beings, demons, that take joy in psychologically torturing people into taking their own lives. And we know of a couple instances of this, namely the incident with Mark Heathcliff and the as yet unnamed woman. And of course we know of a major disaster in which thousands of children were abducted from their homes. And one of the big names coming out of this video is Lieutenant Davis. We also have the unnamed parents of an unnamed child, but don't worry, we'll be getting names for those 3 later on in the series. And on the alternate side, of course, we have the face that appeared in the television. And for those who know the series who are scratching your heads, yes, I have seen Volume 4, but there are people watching this video who haven't seen the series, and I'm trying to break them into it slowly. These are just some of the pieces, and as we go along, we will be given more pieces, as well as be able to connect some of these pieces together. Speaking of the next video, we are on to Exhibition. The opening is a bunch of dial tone sounds along with the same music that was playing in the room when the child was abducted in the last video. And we then see another scene from the Beginner's Bible, this time the story of Noah. Noah is most known, of course, for being the one who built the ark to save his family as well as all of the animals of the world from the flood that God was sending to wipe out the evil that humanity had become. And in this version, rather than hearing a voice from above, and of course, the last time we saw that, it wasn't good. We then see a photo of a boy and his sister in front of a church. From context clues in this video, we can reasonably assume that this boy is Mark Heathcliff. And speaking of which, the police are still investigating his death, and it is listed here as happening in 1992, so we finally have a date to put on that. Additionally, the responding officer on the scene was Lieutenant Thatcher Davis, so we now have the full name of the character I told you to remember about. Did you remember him? The first piece of evidence that we see is from Mark's camcorder. He was taping the open door to his bedroom. It's important to note here that based on the picture of him in front of the church, as well as the cross on the wall in this shot, we can reasonably assume that Mark was religious. And in a world where Satan has usurped religion and people who are religious are particularly susceptible to the alternates, that's probably bad for him. He then went driving to visit this church. He has more shots of windows and those same doors, and one time, the door the camera is facing opens all on its own. Mark shines a flashlight at the opening, but there's nothing there. He also investigates downstairs, which, boy does he need new stairs. That's probably the most horrifying part of this series, is how loud those stairs are. He visits the church once again before returning home and turning on his TV. Or the TV turns on all on its own. I don't know which is more horrifying to me. And very quickly, an alternate takes notice. We then cut to a photo taken outside of Mark's home where things are not looking good. The official remarks from the police are that Mark Heathcliff has been paranoid for an extended period of time and that the reasons are implied. We then cut back to the story of Noah and we progressively hear the sound of church bells growing louder and louder. A stranger approaches Noah and his wife from the bushes, and as they turn around, all color fades from the world. And sure enough, it's him. Gabriel appears to Noah and begins to speak to him. Apparently Noah, being the righteous man that he was in the Bible, has been resisting Gabriel for quite some time.
Why do you try to escape while you fear, Noah? You will be punished for resisting my message.
And for this, he will be punished. But what is the punishment?
You will bring another creature on the boat. You won't notice it at first. Just wait, Noah. Wait until you start to feel something. A change happening in your mind. You won't even realize it has taken form until you see it. When you see it, there is no return. It will give you a message. It will be your last message.
Noah is to take another creature on the ark, one that he won't see until it's too late. And when it has taken form, it will be too late. It will give him a message, and once it has given him this message, he will die. And this is clearly a description of an alternate, a creature that can take form from people's fears and gives them information that leads to their death. And if we needed any more confirmation on Gabriel's identity, here in this scene hidden in the closed captions is another Bible verse. Specifically 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 14, which says, "And no wonder, for Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." We then get another message from the United States Department of Temporal Phenomena, but very briefly the insignia reads, "The death of Mark Heathcliff," as if the alternates are mocking the department by bringing up Mark's death in their own videos. And in this message from the department, we find out that the alternates can also manifest in mirrors. Financial compensation for those who lose someone to the alternates will not be available. This tape is the first to mention the television and mirror destruction order. The alternate situation has become so desperate that the only effective means of combating them is to literally round up and destroy all televisions and all mirrors across America, or just 5 counties? I don't know. It's unclear whether this is a global issue or just a Wisconsin issue. Something tells me Satan is a little more than a Wisconsin issue. And this is the end of Exhibition. So there are a few big things to take away from this video. First, it seems that Mark was tormented by the alternates for quite some time. They don't kill you immediately. Instead, they take great joy in psychologically torturing you for a long period of time. The next is that the public is now aware that the alternates can manifest in things like mirrors and analog televisions. And so in response to this, the television and mirror destruction order was sent out, and we will see the effects of this in a bit. And finally, we also see that Gabriel has been at work beyond just Overthrone. He also interfered with the global flood, ensuring that an alternate survived the catastrophe. See, for those who don't know the biblical story of the flood, the real reason given that God decided to flood the earth is that humanity had become so wicked that every thought and inclination they had was to do evil. One such unspeakable evil is that the fallen angels, aka the demons, were interacting with the women on earth, and this produced the Nephilim. And it seems in this twisted version of reality, Satan interfered with the global flood, allowing an alternate, aka a demon, to survive the flood. And so the alternates were able to survive, and who knows what they did after that. Besides kill Noah. I'm like 99.9% sure they killed Noah. And now on to the next video, the Mandela Catalogue Volume 2. This video takes place in the winter of 2009, and rather than being an analog horror, this volume takes place towards the beginning of the digital age. We are then immediately shown the wanted posters for the two protagonists of this video, Adam Murray and Jonah Marshall, two characters who are believed to be associated with an organization called the Bythorn Paranormal Society. Bythorn is a neighboring county to Mandela County. This is before the text of the poster transitions into Victims 3 and 4. In the original version of Mandela Catalogue Volume 1, Mark Heathcliff and Cesar Torres were labeled as Victim 1 and Victim 2. In other words, Adam and Jonah are probably in trouble. Adam and Jonah receive a call from a woman who is looking to employ the services of the Bythorn Paranormal Society.
You've reached the Bythorn Paranormal Society. How may I help you?
Hello? May I schedule an appointment?
From the dialogue, it's kind of implied that the Bythorn Paranormal Society are basically the Ghostbusters, except it's a group of either young adults or teens, and instead of ghosts, it's alternates, which is the root of all paranormal activity in the Mandela Catalogue. According to this woman, she has been hearing her cat meowing throughout the house, even though her cat has been long dead.
I still hear the meows of my old cat Johnny, but the little guy passed away a few years ago.
Really? A freaking cat alternate? Shh!
It's here that Jonah moans about the possibility of it being a cat alternate, which opens up the horrifying potential that alternates can take on the form of an animal too. This is the only mention of that being a possibility, and I hope that never happens. I swear, if my pet transformed into a horrific abomination of a man standing in the corner of my room, I think I'd simply peel my skin off. And so she asks Adam and Jonah to come to her house and make sure her cat finds peace in the afterlife, I guess.
Can you do 3 nights? I'm away from home on a business trip. I'm sure this will give you enough time to deal with him.
Well...
How about $500 a night?
Oh, hell yeah!
They're hesitant at first, but she offers them $500 a night, and all reservation goes out the window. Listen, $1,500 is $1,500. While they're on the way to the house, the car stalls and needs a jump start.
Well, we got a couple options.
Which are?
We either, one, ask someone to help start our car with the cables, or...
Steal another one?
Yeah.
This line implies that the vehicle they're driving is probably stolen, and that they need to steal yet another one to get to their destination. Yeah, I can see why they're wanted now. I see it. It's also probably important to note that it's Adam who suggests this idea. Just keep in mind that it's usually Adam who always inclines towards the unethical avenue of exploration, I guess. We also start seeing a series of images taken by Jonah. It's important to note that both of these guys have access to whatever folder they're uploading these photos to, because later on in this video they'll start communicating to each other through image titles. It also turns out that the house they're driving to is in Mandela County, which I'm sure is completely fine. Nothing wrong has ever happened in Mandela County, ever. And during the ride, Jonah questions the existence of alternates at all.
Right? Half of me thinks that there aren't even alternates. And the mayor was just too stupid to just make that entire infographic.
Between the 90s and 2009, it seems that the alternate threat has dwindled to such a point that Jonah could even question the existence of alternates in the first place. And I believe this is largely the outcome of the television and mirror destruction order. Once the alternates lost their easy method of appearing to people, they were largely able to be stopped or at least hindered for a long time. But don't worry, as we will see later in the series, they were never gone. And the two also comment on how the GPS is very helpful. Global positioning systems in cars only started to be a thing in 2001, so it's entirely likely that the two have never driven a car with a GPS in it before. It even has a voice and everything, it's great.
You will arrive at your destination in 10 minutes.
Holy shit, that's actually really useful. I mean, they didn't have to outlaw these things, did they? Like, I doubt that guy's face could appear on something like this and, you know, kill you. I don't know.
Very likely a reference to the face from Intruder Alert. And it's also important to note from their dialogue that both Adam and Jonah are orphans. It's also important that based on their ages, their parents very likely died in the 90s, which, as you know, was when the alternates were at the height of their power, and eventually they pull up to the address that the woman gave them. Thus begins their 3 nights at this house. I'm not clever enough to come up with a 5 Nights at Freddy's joke for this moment, so just come up with one on your own. And the first glimpse we get of the inside of the house is 2 doors placed right beside each other. Adam starts going around the house with the standard ghost hunting equipment, trying to call the cat, while Jonah waits in the vehicle.
Here, kitty, kitty. Everything okay?
And you may notice from some of these shots that this house looks familiar, and not in a good way, but I'll get to that later. Adam comes across a locked door, the only locked door in the whole house. And in the car they debrief on the fact that nothing happened that day. And Jonah admits that the longer they stay there, the more he gets the feeling that they should really not be there. That reminds me of the police officer who experienced an overwhelming sense of dread from the house that at the time was infested with alternates. But I'm sure that's not the case here. I'm sure this is a very normal house. The two begin arguing before they hear a scream come over the radio, and the GPS glitches out, flashing the error code 333.
I mean, I think the best thing that can happen is we just leave now and then we say we were here the entire time. Because I'm looking at this house and I'm looking at this footage, and even though there's nothing too threatening about it, I don't like it. I really don't like it.
It's literally just an empty house, bro. Can you suck it up for 3 nights?
Suck what?
.333 is a number that's often associated with the angels. I'm not sure how this fits into the story, but there's that little nugget for you. Immediately, Jonah is terrified, but Adam is very curious.
Where'd that come from?
I think that came from the house, man. I really don't like this now.
I'm the opposite. This is kind of interesting.
I don't think you should go in there now.
I'm going back in.
And so thus begins night 2. We are then warned as an audience that exposure to something that has been redacted has resulted in the following video footage being corrupted. Adam is walking through the house with a receiver. Jonah radios in to check in on him, and then...
Am I coming through?
I'm clear.
Oh my god, behind you!
Shut up. You see anything on the cameras?
Oh my
Dude, cut it out.
Oh my god, behind you!
Dude, seriously, stop.
Oh my god, behind you! Behind you! Behind you!
Dude, fucking quit!
What the hell did I do?
Just forget. Something is speaking over the radio using Jonah's voice. And from here, the video footage becomes corrupted. The two are trying to figure out exactly what's going on before a third voice joins them.
Dude, that's not funny. What? What's going on?
Take a tiny bite. God's probably not even looking.
The feed then cuts to another clip from the Beginner's Bible, but this time from the story of Adam and Eve. Eve has just eaten of the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and is offering it to Adam. Adam bites it, and when he does, the serpent that is the devil laughs to himself.
I don't know. It was good, but suddenly I feel kind of scared.
We now have two characters named Adam in this video who have taken a bite of forbidden knowledge and are about to taste the consequences. Adam sleeps in the house but sets up a camera to record while he does, hoping to catch anything paranormal. And it's a good thing he does because the camera picks up a voice.
You followed the shepherd. You are a fool. Follow my voice instead. You will find great happiness. Wake up, Adam. Do not make me wake the others.
The voice is whispering to Adam in his sleep, trying to lure him to his side, whoever this him is. A tempting voice in his ear, just like the serpent in the garden. The lights cut out in one of the rooms of the house, and when Adam goes to turn them on, the sliding door is now open. Adam goes back to bed but hears a knock at the door. He begins taking photos, and then the door slowly creaks open.
Open your eyes.
The intruder is in the house talking to Adam, and he's not alone because there's another alternate in the room with them. This twisted alternate, with its face stretched into a scream, whispers to Adam in an indecipherable language. After this, hidden in the captions is a message saying, "Patients report multiple sleepless nights after their symptoms initially become apparent. It is not difficult to avoid, however. The patient must try to actively seek it out." It is very likely that this is a medical description of patients suffering from metaphysical awareness disorder. And the reason that that description is being shown right now is because that whispering alternate is exposing him to information. And I think this message gives us a little bit of a deeper insight into what MAD really is. See, as far as we've known, MAD is just this supernatural creature exposes you to forbidden knowledge, and then that's it. But I think in reality, the alternate gives you a message, a lure that will tempt you to investigate further. They offer up a proverbial fruit, and then they wait for you to take it. And then once the patient has actively sought it out, the alternates give them the truth, and then watch it destroy a person. Having not heard from Adam all night, Jonah frantically tries to communicate with him through image captions. It's clear that he knows that Adam has been obsessing over these images of the alternates that they got. The message of the alternates has fully taken root, and he can't escape his own curiosity. Adam then finally responds. He can hear the cat, and the door to the basement has finally been unlocked. Then the two call on the radio. Adam is very calm and mostly curious about the situation, but Jonah is at his limit.
What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Don't. Just don't, okay?
Please.
Basically, Jonah doesn't really even like hunting for alternates because they took so much from him and Adam as kids, implying it took their parents. And yet, at every chance he gets, Adam actively seeks them out, as if he's more curious than he is distraught.
But I'm reaching my fucking limit here. These things have taken so much away from us, yet you still run to them every chance you get. No, I fucking listen to me.
And in this rant, Jonah expresses that he wished that they had never gone looking for Adam's, and then the next part is redacted, because she's dead and gone. And finally, he says that if Adam goes into that basement, he'd be joining her in death. And Jonah would not be sticking around for that.
I wish we never looked for your because she is dead and gone, and we were never gonna get her back.
What did you just fucking say to me?
And I'm sorry that these are the lives that we lead today, but Adam, if you walked down those stairs, you'd be joining her. And if by some miracle you come back out, I don't think you'd be yourself. And I'm telling you right now that I won't be here to confirm that.
Well then just fucking leave then! Leave!
And so he does, without a moment's hesitation. Firstly, I really want to compliment the voice actors for Adam and Jonah in this scene. They did a really good job. This was one of the first examples in the Mandela Catalog of just really top-tier voice acting, and both of these voice actors really gave it their all. And also, this seems like a good point to mention a narrative device that Alex really loves to use in the Mandela Catalog. And that is that characters in this series are often given a biblical name that either foreshadows their fate or their future actions. And this is perfectly exemplified in this video. Adam is of course named after Adam in the Bible, who in his curiosity ate the forbidden fruit. And in the same way, Adam's curiosity about the alternates and their link to his past is about to become his undoing. And then we have Jonah. Now, Jonah is a prophet from the Old Testament who is most known for running away from God after he called him to preach to the city of Nineveh, which was known as a very evil and sinful city. And in the same way, Jonah is turning his back and running away from Adam and these alternates. And we will come across characters in future videos who will also have this same trait of paralleling their biblical counterpart. We cut to Adam entering the basement, but instead of a cat, there's an old analog television with an image of a cat on it. The same cat that was in the toddler stress assessment from the original Volume 1. Of course this was a trap, and Adam bit the fruit and walked right into it. Then the camera is placed on the floor, but instead of the cat on the screen, we see the face from Intruder Alert. The face that appeared across 4 counties and abducted over 3,000 children. Adam asks the man who he is, and in response, in the captions of the video, he says, "What are you?" The screen then flashes several images. Among them are the woman who took her own life in response to her child being abducted, the faces of several alternates, the photo of Mark Heathcliff and his sister in front of the church, the faces of Mark Heathcliff and Cesar Torres, and the insignia for the United States Department of Temporal Phenomena. Then the soothing chime of a music box plays before a woman's upside-down face is seen on the screen. Finally, Adam has a brief conversation over the radio with either several alternates or one alternate using many voices.
I
did the right thing.
Nobody is coming to help you.
Jonah? You there?
Do you understand?
but Jonah doesn't respond. Adam is all alone. The alternates are trying to tell Adam something, and at this point it is unclear what that is. We then cut to the dash cam in Jonah's car as he tries to get away from there as fast as possible. Jonah is of course crying, having lost his closest friend to the alternates. But don't worry, Jonah may have run away, but he has not escaped the alternates. This is how the alternates prey on their victims. The alternate knows that Jonah feels tremendous guilt about abandoning Adam and really begins to twist the knife into that wound. That is before it just starts psychologically torturing him, of course.
Shut the fuck up! Shut up! Shut up!
Desperate to get away from the voice, Jonah runs out of the car. And from the noise he makes afterwards, we can reasonably assume that he's dead now. And this is how Volume 2 ends. Most of the videos up to this point have just been fragmented pieces of a puzzle, and it's our job to put those pieces together. And this is the first video that, while being a part of the greater puzzle, of course, is also a standalone narrative in itself. It's also the first, at least partial, departure from the analog horror genre, though it's still, I would say, analog adjacent. But it is much more akin to found footage or digital horror, if that subgenre even exists. I have no idea. Alex is evolving as a creator, and his series is evolving with him. And now onto something that is not directly addressed in the video, but something that can be easily pieced together. And that is the fact that there was never a woman asking Adam and Jonah to come to the house to investigate a cat ghost. This was the alternates luring them to a house that they had been infesting for years at this point. A house that someone had let them into all the way back in the 90s. It's not directly confirmed in this video, but it is largely believed that this is the house of Cesar Torres. The alternates already had access to the house from when they killed Cesar and lured Mark over to them in the 90s. And they had been waiting there for years to lure 2 more victims, specifically Adam and Jonah, over to them. And of course, we have been introduced to a few very important characters in this volume. On the human side, we have Adam Murray and Jonah Marshall, who will both be making appearances in future videos in some way or another. And on the alternate side, we've been introduced to a new alternate, and that is the alternate that whispered to Adam in the house, who has been given the name by the community of the Preacher. Now, one of the big questions coming away from this video is, what was all that at the end? Now, a lot of what was said in that end scene will be a huge revelation later in the series, but for now I just want to focus on one detail. Jonah mentions that he and Adam had started out looking for someone who has been redacted. We only know that this person was a woman and that she had special significance to Adam. Not only do I believe that this person is Adam's mother, but it has been confirmed that Adam's mother is the woman from the toddler stress assessment video, the one who, distraught at the sight of her missing infant, took her own life. And this would mean that Adam was abducted by the alternates as a child, and who knows what they could have done to him while he was gone.
What are you?
This is why the alternates ask Adam if he remembers them, the same face on the TV that all those years ago took a young Adam Murray away. And since both Adam and Jonah are orphans in this universe, does that mean that Jonah's mother went the same route as Adam's mother? Was she a victim of the alternates too? Was Jonah abducted? The alternates used the mystery of Adam's past to lure him into that basement, where they tormented him using the voice of his own mother.
Nobody is coming to help you.
And I'm trying so hard
to avoid spoilers in this video that lead to a big reveal in a future video. So let's just move right along to Mandela Catalog Volume 333. And there's the angel number again. We begin this video back in the 90s in the Murray household. Little Adam is crying and his mother, Lynn Murray, tries to comfort him. She then calls her ex-husband Jude Murray about this very issue. The two got divorced, citing irreconcilable differences between the two. Lynn seems to be trying her best, and from all appearances, Jude just couldn't care less.
You promise you'll actually come over this time? He's still your child too, you know.
I swear to God, Lynn, if this is just an imaginary friend or something, I'm gonna lose it.
We then see the eye of baby Adam seated in front of the TV. We then cut to a Mandela County Police Department broadcast about the promotion of Sergeant Ruth Weaver and Lieutenant Thatcher Davis. Remember him? He's about to be important. He's the one who investigated the Murray household after the incident that hasn't happened yet. We then hear a call to the police department from the local school regarding the absence of one of their students, a student named Mark Heathcliff. He's been absent for several days and no one has been able to contact him. Thatcher Davis is the one who gets the call and was the first to respond at Mark's house. After he gets no response at the door, he breaks it down and enters the premises. And this is how the MCPD discover that Mark has been dead for, I don't know how long, maybe a couple days? Not long. We are then shown more evidence from the scene. Firstly, we see body cam footage of Thatcher discovering the body of Mark, and all around the body are empty shells and magazines. While it appears he did take his own life, it seems that he put up quite a fight first with some unknown adversary. And in the room with him is a CRT television playing static and an audio cassette player. Other pieces of evidence include a Holy Bible and Mark's own personal journal entitled Reassurances. This house call really got to Thatcher, who began obsessing over the case. Ruth Weaver, who's a close personal friend of Thatcher, tries to tell him to let this case go, but something about it just doesn't sit right.
You do realize you just got promoted, right? You don't have to work on this bullshit case anymore.
Listen, I got a lead. Okay? Just got some evidence to review still. That's it.
I'll believe it when I see it. See you later.
Alright. Lock the door on the way out.
Thatcher continued to pore over the evidence gathered that day. Prints on the door were matched to someone who looks very much like Mark Heathcliff, but his fingers were unnaturally far apart. And of course, Mark's prints were found on the handgun. The cassette player, the Journal of Reassurances, and Mark's camcorder were bagged for evidence. I can't tell if I'm doing an accent or I just have a speech impediment at this point. Camcorder footage contained evidence of a very unnatural intruder. Cassette tapes were also found on the scene, and the audio that they contained was very disturbing, to say the least. They were titled Voices Outside My Room. The first recorded instance is a singular voice, and whatever was making it, it ain't human.
You need to open the door. No. I am not going away.
There were no faults found in the tape. Whatever was speaking actually talked like that. And the second recording was multiple voices in conversation with each other.
What time is it? It's just after 8. I'm nervous for the time. Don't be nervous about the time. You have loads of time. Let's see.
These unnatural intruders had trapped a frightened young man in his room. And it must have been horrifying for Mark to realize that these voices weren't going anywhere. They had all the time in the world. All they needed to do was wait him out. And the final recording was, well, you'll see. These beings are not human. They don't need rest, and they can wait as long as it takes for a victim's psyche to break. And it seems like in the case of Mark Heathcliff, there was an entire army of them outside his door, just waiting for him to give in. Finally, the biggest clue to what Mark was experiencing during this time can be found in his journal of reassurances, comforting phrases that he would write to himself in order to keep his sanity while this attack was going on. Quoting the victim's journal, his first entry reads, "God loves me unconditionally. Always remember that, no matter the circumstance. God loves all of us simply because He chooses to do so. He loves me when no one else loves me. I am at peace." When faced with an overwhelming cosmic force of evil at his doorstep, he prays to God in the hopes that he will be delivered from this torment. I sure hope this series doesn't take place in a reality where Satan has usurped religion and became the central focus of all religious thought. His next entry reads, "Today is a day that I need God's love more than anything. I am alone and I need to feel the warmth of His love and reassurance." Further down he says, "My Lord, I am afraid. I beg for your love and protection against evil." As his situation became increasingly more desperate, so too did his cries for help. And after this entry, either he came to some haunting revelation, or the intruders at his doorstep told him something that no human being should ever have to know. Because it is at this point that his tone changes entirely. "I have no choice anymore. The cops never came for me. Nobody came for me. Whoever is reading this, please stop it before it does this to someone else." Before repeating the phrase over and over, "Who have I been praying to this whole time?" His writing after this becomes unintelligible, as it seems that Mark succumbed to sleep deprivation from days of relentless psychological torture and exposure to forbidden knowledge. The final entry in his journal, as well as the victim's final recorded words, read, "My eyes are wide open." And that was the death of Mark Heathcliff, along with the death of this whole detective bit. It seems that during Mark's torment, he came to the horrible realization that whatever he was praying to while he was trapped in there was not God. The literal armies of hell had gathered outside of Mark's room, and they could wait however long it took for him to finally open that door. And whenever he would pray for protection to what he thought was God, he was unknowingly giving the intruders at his door even more power. Not only did Mark die, but he died in the most impossible, desperate, and dreadful way humanly possible. This is why I think the Mandela Catalogue sometimes borders on cosmic horror, because there are so many moments like this, where a person is pitted against this overwhelming, impossible, immortal, dreadful force, and it's only a matter of time before they finally surrender to despair. Posted on a street somewhere is an alternate report for Cesar Torres, a person of interest who may display inhuman features. Also posted are two signs that give us more subtle world building of the universe of the Mandela Catalogue. The poster on the left is for a charity soccer game, the proceeds of which will go to the Mandela Grieving Parents Foundation. After the alternates stole thousands of children away from their parents, a foundation was set up to support them in this unbelievable grief. And on the right is a recruitment poster for the Mandela County Police Department. See, within the department, it is well known that you can't help a caller reporting an alternate encounter. But to the public, it just looks like the police are doing nothing about the alternates. And really, they aren't. And so the public turns on them.
The police are desperate for new recruits because the truth is they have no recruits, because everyone thinks that the police are at the very least just not helping anyone, and at the very most maybe on the alternate side. But what was happening with Thatcher after the incident at Mark's house? Well,
ha! You thought you could get rid of me? Well, so did the alternates, and look what happened to them. Yeah, I know there's still a big problem in our society. Shut up. The case of Mark Heathcliff is over, but who could forget about case 334, the incident between Jude Murray and an unknown assailant. But first, a tape I took from the evidence locker meant for the eyes of Thatcher Davis. This was sent over by David Lee from Mandela Tech, the local tech store. Thatcher had hoped that Dave would be able to salvage some VHS tapes that he had sent over to him, but Dave responded saying that only 2 minutes of footage was recoverable. This tape was taken from the Murray household following the incident that I will talk about in a bit. The recovered tape seems to be a segment from a kids' TV show called The Might of the Subconscious, even though no record of such a show exists. The segment features a floating face by the name of Stanley.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, hello.
And yes, Stanley does bear a lot of resemblance to Limbo, a puppet created by Jim Henson in the real world. Stanley talks directly to the child watching, but unbeknownst to the parents of Adam Murray, it seemed that this Stanley was talking directly to Adam. Stanley said that he loved having friends and made the claim that he can create friends out of midair.
Would you like to know a secret of mine? I can make friends appear out of thin air. What was that? You want to know how?
And then Stanley asked Adam to close his eyes and picture what a friend looks like.
What do they sound like? What do they look like? What colored eyes do they have?
He claims that rather than having an imaginary friend, it is much better to manifest them into the real world instead, which I'm a noir detective stereotype. I have no idea what that means. And then Stanley asked Adam to imagine this friend as hard as he could. And this is where this good-natured looking character takes a sinister turn.
Can you keep an even bigger secret? I think it worked. Your new friend is somewhere in your house. Now it's up to you to go and find them.
The child Adam, goaded on by the face in the television, imagined a friend, trying to will it into existence. And Stanley then told the young Adam that his new friend was somewhere in the house. And it is shortly after this that the child would disappear. Jude Murray heard the commotion and shortly thereafter made a call to 911 about a home intrusion. Thatcher Davis was the officer responding, and here is the recorded conversation between the two.
911, what's the emergency? Please, you gotta help me. There's someone in my house. I don't know what to do. I don't even know what they got inside. I've had my doors and windows locked for months. Alright, just calm down, okay? We'll get this figured out. Just need to stay quiet. Are you hiding? Yes. Does this person have a weapon? I don't know. I can't tell.
Thatcher asked if this intruder was threatening the family with violence, to which Jude only had this to say.
Is this person threatening you or your family? No, he just stares in the corner. He's not taking anything. He's just standing there. I think my wife is hurt. I don't know what to do. It's gonna be fine. You just need to calm down. I want to look at his face again. Okay.
Thatcher, being a seasoned cop at this point, recognized the handprint of the alternates all over this thing. And so before he made the definitive call that there was nothing that they could do, he made sure to check that this was an alternate. And the most tried and true way of recognizing an alternate is if it takes on the appearance of someone close to the victim.
Does this man resemble anyone you know by chance? No. What? I have never seen anyone in my life that looks anything like him. That can't be right. That doesn't make any sense. What? I'm sending over one of our officers. Just don't hang up, okay?
Thatcher then radios Ruth Weaver, who responds to the incident. And when he switches back on the line to Jude Murray, he is no longer responding. Weaver radios in requesting backup from Thatcher because the cops who initially arrived on the scene fled. This 911 call was a mystery from the start, but it only got more haunting from there. They set up an automated camera but got nothing, and so Thatcher and Ruth decided to do a home inspection. And of course it is here that they discover the body of Lynn Murray. At this point, Thatcher's body cam started glitching, and then the lights went out in the house. And the two cops quickly found out that the intruder was still in the house. The following body cam footage is unedited and presented to you exactly how it was recorded.
Hello? Hello? Identify yourself. Identify yourself. This is a police investigation. I need you to identify yourself. Police investigation. I need you to identify yourself. Look. Look. What do you want?
The intruder mimics Thatcher's voice, even the distortion of him communicating on the radio. And it also mimics the conversation between Thatcher and Jude Murray. After this encounter, Thatcher panicked and fled the house, not realizing that Weaver was still inside. Thatcher began radioing desperately for backup, but no one responded. And in the Murray household, the song Amazing Grace began playing completely on its own. The music was then heard outside of MCPD headquarters through our security cameras. Whatever being appeared in the Murray household that night wasn't human, and it appears that it followed Thatcher all the way back to headquarters. The following clip is the last body cam footage recovered from Thatcher Davis.
Mommy met my best friend. He likes to hide, but he wants to meet you. I want to play with him in the TV.
Stop or I'll shoot! I said stay back!
This is the perpetrator from the Murray household. Up until this time, we had only seen the alternates take on the form of people close to the victim, friends or family primarily. This was the first ever recorded instance of an alternate manifesting from the imagination of a child. They used an innocent child to gain access to the home and then abducted the child. And then Lynn Murray, of course, took her own life out of grief for her missing child. Jude Murray is still missing and at this point presumed dead. Lieutenant Thatcher Davis and Sergeant Ruth Weaver both responded to the scene, but only one made it out. And the alternate followed him, speaking in the voices of its victims, including the young Adam Murray.
Wanna meet my best friend?
And as he descended on Thatcher, the names of all the victims the alternates had taken at this point flash on screen. Thatcher opened fire, but it had no effect. The being that attacked him was given form by the imagination of a child, a twisted mockery of humanity. And this concludes case 334, Jude Murray versus Unknown Assailant.
One last time, we see the eyes of the young Adam Murray, the innocent child who unwittingly destroyed his family. And the final shot of the video is of a statue of Jesus and Simon of Cyrene, the man who helped Jesus carry his cross to the hill where he would be executed. And as we stare at this image, the visage of Gabriel slowly fades into view. And this is the end of volume 333. This is the first time in the series that we have seen an alternate in live action. And boy, was it satisfying to see when this volume came out. That sequence is still like top 5 Mandela Catalog moments for me. And we also learn a lot more about Adam's backstory from this. But how is he alive in 2009 if he was taken by the alternates as a child? Where is Jude Murray? Is he dead? He's certainly a deadbeat, but is he dead? These questions will luckily be answered later. Like most volumes of the Mandela Catalog, we now have been introduced to several new characters, as well as been given the names of characters who were previously not named. Firstly, we have Lynn and Jude Murray, the parents of Adam Murray. Then we have Sergeant Ruth Weaver, who's a close friend of Lieutenant Thatcher Davis. And on the alternate side, we have Stanley and the abomination that he helped Adam to create. But now moving on to a much shorter entry in the series with Every Day Gets Brighter. This is a tape recorded by Thatcher Davis. It is believed by the community as well as myself that this is in response to the death of Mark Heathcliff as well as the rising alternate threat. It is also entirely written by the actor for Thatcher, Thorne Baker, and it was officially published as a canon entry in the Mandela Catalog by Alex Kister in this video.
They won't stop till they've taken everything. Everything I loved. Everything I cared about is gone.
Thatcher is sick and tired of putting up a front and pretending that the alternate rising threat isn't affecting him. Everyone hates the police for not being helpful, but the truth is they literally cannot do anything.
All these missing people, they blame us for not finding them, but we don't know where the fuck they went.
And over top of this monologue is evidence photos from Mark's house. We also see a picture of the twisted abomination from the last episode, but this time it's wearing a hoodie. This officially confirms, at least to me, that the alternate that appeared in the Murray household and attacked Thatcher is at least in some way a manifestation of the intruder. Maybe not the intruder directly, but it's related to him in some way. And that's the end of this video. Moving on to the next one, Interlude. This was posted in anticipation of Volume 4, which we will get to in a minute here. We see a series of images including a population trend over the years for Mandela County. After 1992, the year that the alternates made themselves publicly known, the population of Mandela County dropped drastically. Some likely died, but mainly I think people just wanted to get away from this cursed town. And by 2009, the entire population of the county is barely over 1,000 people. We then see a video put together by the Bythorn Paranormal Society in 2007. If you'll remember, this is the organization that Adam and Jonah were a part of. This is specifically a message to Adam from another member of the society named Sarah. She managed to somehow steal some videos from the MCPD and wants Adam to take a look. The video in question is from the Department of Temporal Phenomena, and it says that the unforeseen threat of the alternates has been eliminated. This is before the video cuts to the text in the beginning, which of course is an excerpt from the very beginning of the book of Genesis when God created the heavens and the earth. Not sure what that's about, but I think we can assume that the alternate threat was not eliminated. We then cut to a spectrum chart of alternate assimilation, because alternate assimilation occurs in a spectrum of very successful or very not successful, as we will see, beginning with a flawed assimilation where an alternate is unable to assume the full likeness of a person for unknown reasons. And in the middle is a perfect assimilation where an alternate is able to perfectly mimic a person. And on the opposite side of the spectrum is an overdriven assimilation, where an alternate distorts the features of a person to the point where they are unrecognizable as what they were before. To which we see a picture of a nun, and beside it is the face from Volume 2 that whispered in Adam's ear. We then hear the distorted shouts of an entire crowd, and we are shown more images. The first is of the house of Mark Heathcliff with his bedroom window highlighted. We then see the church that Mark attended before we cut back to the image of the nun, and text appears referring to her as a messenger, similarly to how the intruder was first introduced. And this is the end of Interlude. One important note from this video is the member of the Bythorn Paranormal Society named Sarah. She's going to be very important in future videos. Another important note is the reveal that the preacher from a previous video is an overdriven assimilation of a nun, or at the very least a religious woman. And we'll see more on this later, and believe me, it ties into an element of the Mandela Catalog that is probably the most terrifying aspect of it, in my opinion. Now moving on to the Mandela Catalog, Volume 4. The video starts with the account in Genesis chapter 1 of the creation of the earth. But as always, this is the Mandela Catalog, so nothing about this is normal. First, the day and the night were separated, then the skies and the waters were created, then the land was separated from the waters, and the land was covered in plant life. And in the background, we see the silhouette of the angel Gabriel as he appears to corrupt a tree. I believe this may be the Mandela Catalog's interpretation of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Rather than being a tree created by God to give Adam and Eve the element of free will, it is instead a corruption of God's perfection by Satan. And then it goes right back to the story. It goes through all the other days of creation until we get to the creation of man and woman with Adam and Eve. The two fall asleep together, and then text appears on the screen saying, "Awaken my son." Spoiler alert, this is probably not God. Adam walks through the garden at night, and waiting under a tree is the angel Gabriel. And there, laying on the garden floor, is a fruit. Now this is another departure from the original biblical story. You all likely know at least the broad strokes of the story of Adam and Eve, but in the original Genesis story, the serpent tempts Eve with the fruit first, and then she is the one who gives the fruit to Adam. But in this version of events, the devil, disguised as an angel, calls to Adam in his sleep and compels him to eat the fruit.
This night was different than the last. The woman would gaze up at the sky, but the brilliance and beauty of the stars were obscured by the man staring down at her. The woman was afraid.
Eve wakes up that night with Adam looming over her, but something has changed. We then cut back to Mandela County. Dave Lee from Mandela Tech is on the phone with a man named O'Brien. Dave asks how O'Brien's gig at the church went, to which he says that it went really well.
How'd that church gig go?
Oh, it was great. Got the whole congregation out of their seats during the last performance. Felt empowering, you know. According to the other band members, that's never happened before. Made me feel real special.
O'Brien asks Dave how things have been at Mandela Tech, and we are jump scared by live action footage.
Enough about me, though. How you been holding up?
I don't know. You know how it is. I'm sure you've seen the news. Local businesses haven't really been doing so hot recently.
Finally, we see the man, the myth, the Alex Kister in live action. The whole series is built on the uncanny valley, both in terms of its creatures and in its overall aesthetic. And now that we have advanced all the way to live action footage, Alex has chosen this very uncanny visual style, which is very reminiscent of the Sin City movies. And of course, after the television and mirror destruction order, Mandela Tech obviously fell on hard times. Analog Tech has been destroyed, and he's offering in-store credit for any returned VHS tapes. And based on the ad for the GPS in the background, we can reasonably assume that this takes place in the 2000s, likely around 2009, because of events we'll see later in the video. And his business is also struggling because the population of Mandela County keeps dwindling. And so O'Brien offers Dave a position at the church if he's ever, unable to make ends meet. Meanwhile, an employee of the store named Evelyn is locking up a bunch of VHS tapes so they don't summon alternates and kill a bunch of people. But in the box, she finds a tape from Thatcher Davis marked Restore. This, as well as a later scene, confirmed for us that Thatcher somehow survived the alternate attack and has been living in hiding all of these years. And while Dave isn't looking, Evelyn pockets the tape, her curiosity getting the best of her. And she sneaks into the back room, which contains the last CRT television in all of Wisconsin. I think I mentioned this in passing earlier, but Mandela County is in Wisconsin. Not that that has any bearing on the story. You could picture any Midwestern area, really. And as it turns out, the tape that she pocketed is the toddler stress assessment video. We then cut to a person frantically scribbling on a sheet of paper. The sketch is of an alternate, and the artist is Thatcher. The former cop has spent a decade in hiding, obsessing over the alternate cases and trying to find any means of stopping or at least slowing them down. And in the meantime, the house he's in is out of food, and he can't show his face outside for a reason that we'll see later. Next, we see a local news broadcast that brings on a graduate from Bythorn High School, someone who recently founded a group that she calls the Bythorn Paranormal Club. The graduate in question is Sarah Heathcliff, the sister of Mark Heathcliff. She just recently started the club and is looking for a partner to investigate the paranormal with.
I'm currently looking for a work partner to pursue this line of work with. Don't worry about having any experience or anything. I'm also a beginner.
We then get a screen saying that Sarah Heathcliff is currently at large. Sarah ends up getting a response to her ad from Adam Murray, who is very interested in joining her club.
Hey Sarah, I saw your video. I'd like to join you with your investigation stuff since I think that sounds pretty cool. I go to Workshaw High School, but I hope that's not too much of an issue. Also, I grew up in Mandela, so I have some ideas of places we can explore. Up to you though. Hope to hear back from you.
Together, the two rename the group the Bythorn Paranormal Society, and in 2007 he is made an official member. Adam immediately then starts breaking and entering into houses in order to show Sarah something real spooky.
This will be fine. I promise. Imagine the reactions from this. This will be great, and I know the perfect spot.
And so on their first outing, he takes her to an active crime scene.
Look down that hallway, Sarah. Look at it, and don't look away.
Sarah is obviously nervous about this, but true to Adam's character from the last time we saw him, he is very morbidly curious about the paranormal, specifically alternates, and that curiosity overrides any other instinct that man may have. At the crime scene, they press play on a tape which starts playing sounds of people screaming. If you remember, one of the first things we learned about the alternates is that they feed on people's fear. And so Adam is essentially throwing chum in the water and seeing what will take the bait. Sarah is scared for her life, but Adam is loving every minute of this.
Look, Sarah, look at it. What are you doing?
No. Adam, please.
It's right there, Sarah, look.
And as they watch, numerous hands reach into the hallway as if lured by the screaming. The two flee the scene, and Sarah has officially had enough of field work.
You got a crazy good shot, Sarah.
No, I'm not doing that ever again.
She still stays on to manage the society and their posts, but if Adam wants to keep doing these excursions, he's gonna need to find a partner. And as we know, that partner ends up being Jonah Marshall. We then cut to 2 years later in the year 2009. And yes, this is after the incident in Volume 2 where they enter the house and Adam talks with the alternates and Jonah gets killed. Adam calls Sarah, but all he says is that they got really good footage.
Hey Sarah, it's Adam. I'm on the way back. We got some pretty good material that I think you'll be pretty psyched about. So, yeah, see you soon.
From his voice, he clearly doesn't care at all that Jonah's dead. He gets home and turns on his computer, and his messages give us a little bit more character clues as to exactly the kind of person that Adam is. Firstly, he appears to have just broken up with Evelyn, the woman we saw at Mandela Tech. We also have another reference to the fact that Adam and Jonah would often get high together. The first example of that was in Volume 2. Another is a message from someone named Amanda, who definitely doesn't think highly of Adam. It's also messed up but kind of funny that the first thing he does when he gets home is delete Jonah from his contacts. Like, I know he's dead, but like, have some respect. He didn't care about Jonah at all. Adam messages Sarah that the investigation went really well, but that Jonah was brutally murdered by the alternates. And she immediately obviously calls him to get him to explain himself because she's a human being.
You just drove off?
Didn't really think it would be that big of a deal.
What?
Put yourself in my shoes for a second. I just got done walking for miles in the cold, alright? Would you expect me not to take the car?
What the hell has gotten into you?
Apparently, Adam walked for miles, found the car parked on the side of the highway with Jonah's dead body next to it, presumably just left him there and drove the van off into the sunset. It's made very clear that Adam seems to lack all empathy for anyone around him. He views all his friends as either pawns or enablers of his alternate quest/death marches. And she demands that he make a memorial video for Jonah to publish for their online viewers.
You're the one that handles the online.
No, you. This is all your fault, Adam. We didn't need this footage. I don't care how good it is. Why don't you make a memorial video for the only person that ever cared about you?
Adam hangs up on her before she's done yelling at her, which is honestly very in character. Like, that's the online equivalent to just, are you done? Adam is a character, man. She then follows up with a message saying, no wonder Evelyn left you, which, you know, fair enough. She's earned that one. Leaving this drama, we go back to Thatcher for a monologue. He's been in hiding for 17 years now, being constantly tormented by his guilt and by the alternates. He's been working out of the now abandoned Mandela County Police Department, poring over old alternate cases, desperate for anything. Thatcher's also incredibly guilty over the death of Ruth Weaver, who of course died in the Murray household. He specifically says that the darkness followed him home, which is both a reference to the guilt that he's carried with him since that day, and the fact that a literal alternate has been stalking him every single day for 17 years. And as evidence of this, we see him go to bed, and sure enough, there's an alternate in his closet. It has been there for years, assuming the form of Ruth Weaver, his best friend who, in a moment of pure fear and instinct, he left to die. We then cut to Dave Lee, who is calling Evelyn to tell her not to come into work tomorrow. The reason he gives is that Mandela Tech no longer makes enough money to keep her on the payroll, which may be true, but the real reason is that he found out that she viewed a tape on the CRT television in the back. And he can't allow her back into the store because he knows that an alternate has latched onto her, whether she knows it or not. He says that he'll put her in contact with Thatcher if she needs work, but really I think he's doing this in the vain hope that Thatcher might be able to save her.
I appreciate your loyalty so much, Evelyn. It's been a good run. Bye-bye.
Dave, wait. What's with the closet? The old TV? Why do you stop?
Dave then finally calls O'Brien back, saying he'd be happy to accept that position at the church. I don't think I need to remind you the dangers of church in this universe. And now back to Thatcher, and more specifically a flashback to the day that he was attacked by the alternate. It had him at his mercy, and then it did something he didn't expect. Something horrific. In plain view of Thatcher, the alternate took on his likeness and called off the backup that Thatcher had desperately been requesting.
This is Lieutenant Patrick Davis. Seems like I made a mistake. Everything's clear here at the station. Calling off all units. Over.
And I have to say right here, shout out to the VFX artists, because how the alternates are portrayed in this episode is terrifying. It's the absolute best, and by that I mean I hate it, aspect of the Uncanny Valley, and it's incredible. The alternate then starts tormenting Thatcher with his deepest fears. Thatcher always hated that the police could do nothing about the alternates, and so the alternates really attack him in that spot.
Dead or alive, you're no use to these people.
To the people out there, he's useless. Just a scared boy with a gun.
Sound familiar?
And in that last line, the alternate reminds him of Mark, the first boy with a gun that he couldn't save. And in the current day, Thatcher writes a letter to his dead friend Ruth, trying to express his guilt in some way. In the 17 years since that day, he has never forgiven himself. And every day he wishes that she were here instead of him. And the voice acting is incredible for this whole scene. It's incredible throughout, but like, Alex has some really good actors in this series.
Because the reality is, Ruth, I don't think I'm gonna find another friend like you again.
And now back to the saga of Adam Murray. He still doesn't see the point of a stupid memorial video, so still his charming old self, I see. He sends Sarah an early draft of the video, which is just static noises and an image that doesn't even load properly, so just literally the most low effort thing he could have done. When pressed, Adam realizes that he sent the wrong file, so he finally sends the right file. This one is more official, even though it sounds like Adam still couldn't care less.
It is with heavy hearts that we announce the passing of Jonah Marshall, a recent member of the Bythorn Paranormal Society. Jonah was beloved by many of our viewers, and for good reason. He brought a positive energy to an otherwise serious organization.
It's also absolutely unhinged that in a memorial video for a friend who was brutally murdered by the alternates, he says to rate 5 stars and subscribe. That sounds like something one of the Paul brothers would have done. My friend's dead, like the video. It also says that he died peacefully surrounded by loved ones, which is just an outright lie. This is before the video cuts to footage captured within the house, as well as a crude sketch of the messenger that appeared to Adam. It then gives Jonah's birth and death date before it cuts to an interview between Evelyn Miller and MCPD officers. And of course, this is regarding Adam, who is at large because he's linked with the BPS.
He was always the nicest guy up until he started the investigations of Jonah. I never believed in that kind of stuff. He always came across as a skeptic, sort of just more surprised than anything. was always something going on with him, but he just never told me. We got into a big fight over it, and he just told me some awful, terrible things that I just wish he had never told me.
She says that he was very normal up until he started going on these paranormal excursions, and then he became very closed off. They got into a fight, and then he told her things that she wished she never had to know. This line in particular immediately springs to mind thoughts of metaphysical awareness disorder, but that, I believe, can only be given by alternates to other people. And this also brings to mind the retelling of the story of Adam and Eve from the beginning of this volume. Even the name Evelyn being just a stand-in for Eve. Adam and Evelyn were together for a time, but Adam was eventually lured to the house where he ate the proverbial fruit, and when he came back, he wasn't the same. It then cuts to dashcam footage from the night that Jonah died. Adam is talking, almost seeming to respond to this accusation by Evelyn, accusations that he had no way of hearing. But then almost immediately something weird happens.
I never said that. It's messing with my words. I don't know what's going on. It's not me. The computer, I swear. I'm not stupid. I never said that. The computer, I swear. Messing with my words. I'm not stupid, alright? I don't know what's going on. Messing with my words. I never said that.
Shut the fuck up!
I never said that. Messing with my words.
I've had enough of you!
Messing with my words. I never said
Please, just get the fuck out of my head!
And I'll come back to this at the end of the volume. We then cut to a free software demo by Mandela Tech called Studio 2. A horrific avatar appears on the screen and starts giving a tutorial on how to use the program.
Welcome to Face Studio 2, a revolutionary software that can make your face say anything you want at the touch of a button. All we need from you is your personal details and 3 photos of your face, demonstrated on screen now.
In a world where there are supernatural creatures that can manifest in electronics and try and assume the identity of real people in the real world and replace them, probably not a good idea to invent this software or use it. All it requires of you is all of your personal information and 3 photos of your face. And once you do this, you can have this digital face say anything that you want. Why would you do this? I have no idea. This sounds horrifying. Maybe it's just because I'm growing up in the age of AI and deepfakes and, you know, a realm where anyone can be made to say anything and enact any scenario. But also the alternates can do that too, so I think that's a pretty legitimate fear in our universe and theirs. And a new feature of the software is the ability to stretch and customize your face.
A new feature with Face Studio 2 is the ability to customize your face even further.
The video unsurprisingly begins glitching out at this point, as further evidence that this program is probably malevolent and most definitely tied to the alternates. It starts broadcasting footage of the Murray household and the body of Lynn Murray still hanging there. The voice of the avatar also begins saying a string of seemingly unrelated but very terrifying sentences.
A thriving society of followers of the truth. A mess of tangled limbs danced around my bedroom. I held my breath and waited for it to stop. I was too scared to invade my relationship.
This is before the avatar's face finally morphs into a configuration resembling the alternate that appeared in the Murray household on that night. So yeah, Face Studio 2, probably a bad thing you shouldn't download, you know? Meanwhile, Evelyn Miller arrives at MCPD headquarters. She walks around the building looking for Thatcher, but no one's there. Thatcher, who is currently at home, gets a call from Dave. Dave never says this, but he's probably consumed with guilt that Evelyn is probably about to die because of him. And Dave is calling to let Thatcher know that he will no longer be helping him restore these old tapes.
No, look, man.
any of the shit you do for me.
How much of that was really worth it, though? If you would have just given up already, maybe you could find peace as well.
Thatcher's upset because he's a cop and has no idea how to restore tapes. And Dave questions if this was even worth it because it's been 17 years and they've seemingly gotten nothing good or no good leads from this. He tells Thatcher to move on and to try and find peace, just like he's going to try and find peace with this new church gig. And later that day, Dave arrives at the church and calls O'Brien.
Hey, just got here. Could you unlock the front door, perhaps?
You're at the front?
Yep. I'm at the front of the building.
Perfect. We'll be right there. Stay still.
This quote is definitely suspicious, but nowhere near as suspicious as what happens next. Yeah, this is probably bad. The entire sky above Mandela County goes dark in an instant. The last time we saw something like this was in Overthrone, and we all know how that went. We then hear a distorted choir as a brilliant light appears in the sky above the church. And then the angel Gabriel appears above the church in full view of Dave. And rather than the text-to-speech voice in his animated appearances, this angel speaks.
You were so close, David. You had it all figured out. The stage was set for you. Yet you still managed to follow the shepherd.
The voice actor for Gabriel is the same voice actor as O'Brien, so we can reasonably assume that O'Brien was never real and was an alternate lure, specifically Gabriel himself. He tells Dave that everything was set up perfectly for him, and yet somehow he still managed to follow the shepherd. We have no idea what this means right now, but hopefully we'll get back to that. But now he finally got Dave to turn away from trying to fight the alternates. And it's only a matter of time before he gets to Thatcher as well.
Your existence has meant nothing. Only a matter of time before I move to your cop friend. He seems like an easy target.
Dave asks how on earth he could accomplish anything for this cosmic being he's having a conversation with, to which Gabriel says that Dave already played his part perfectly.
You're not real. How can I accomplish anything?
Oh, David, you have already done all of my bidding for me.
Dave collapses to the ground dead with blood pouring from his eyes. And this is how Dave, the best character in the series, was killed by the devil himself. And that last line about Dave accidentally helping Gabriel is very important. And I believe the main meaning behind this is the creation of Face Studio 2, which was made by Mandela Tech. Perhaps Gabriel was whispering in Dave's ear when he came up with the idea, or maybe he just thought it could be a silly, goofy program and the alternates corrupted it. But either way, he helped the alternates get one step closer to whatever their goal is. The software is clearly under the control of the alternates, and it's unclear at this point what exactly they are planning to use it on, but it's probably something nefarious. Or maybe the plan is incredibly obvious and I'm just too lost in the sauce at this point. Evelyn at the MCPD building finds the key to the archive room and begins perusing the files there. She finds the old Murray case and the divorce agreement between Adam's parents. She also finds a form reviewing the young Adam's performance when sat in front of the child stress assessment video. And the results are very interesting. Adam had absolutely no responses to any of the stimuli in the video. Not a single reaction. The doctor who sent this form to the parents gave two possible explanations. Either he has a complete lack of any intellectual capabilities whatsoever, which is kind of mean, or two, it is the result of a recent phenomena occurring in children Adam's age. This is incredibly important, and we will see why in just a minute here. And as Evelyn reads this, someone turns off all the lights in the police department. She wanders the halls calling out to see who's there, and as she hides around corners, a set of arms reaches out from the darkness to grab her. But enough of that, because we finally get back to Adam at his computer. Sarah is demanding to know what on earth that memorial video was, but Adam's done talking to her now. He then gets a message from an unknown caller saying they've been trying to contact him. Normally, I'd say that this is just a spam caller, but this is the Mandela Catalogue. As Adam begins to type a very blunt message to this person, their image pops up, and who should it be but the intruder? The intruder then breaks through into Adam's screen and begins to talk to him directly. And boy is there a lot to unpack in this. First of all, the voice is very familiar, and we'll see why in a second here. The intruder talks about the young Adam Murray who would always sit in front of the television.
The light scared off all the monsters. It kept them safe. Do you remember my face?
It is then revealed that Stanley, the puppet who helped the young Adam accidentally summon an alternate into the house, was the intruder. But that's not all.
With contorted flesh and broken bones, I made myself known.
The face that abducted thousands of children back in 1992 was also the intruder. He talks about taking the child Adam away, and he talks about how since that night, every time Adam looks in the mirror, he has seen the same monsters, to which the face of the messenger appears on screen. And then the intruder conveys knowledge that recontextualizes everything that we've known about Adam Murray up until this point.
Do you remember that night, Murray? When you stare into the mirror, you see the same monsters from your bedroom, don't you? Your skin is not your own. You're not the real you.
This is a massive revelation with huge implications for the Mandela Catalog. But first, let's finish off this video. Similar to the end of Overthrone, we cut to a shot of the sky with the bold red text of Gabriel proclaiming, "I deceived him, the Mandela prophet. We have their prayers and their records. It begins today." And after this, 3 images of Adam appear on screen, in the same arrangement as users of Face Studio 2. And this is the end of Mandela Catalog Volume 4. And with that out of the way, let's go back and talk about everything that we know about Adam so far. He was born to Lynn and Jude Murray, who would later split. He was scared of the dark as a child and was always comforted by the TV. And then in 1992, the incident happened where the intruder appeared to Adam, got him to summon an alternate in the house that abducted him and caused his mother to take her own life. And we have no idea what happened to Jude in this whole thing. And the sad thing revealed by the intruder in those final lines is that the young baby Adam is truly dead. because the Adam that was returned to the Murray household and the Adam that would grow up to join the Bythorn Paranormal Society is an alternate. Now, this reveal has massive implications for the Mandela Catalog as a whole, and for the alternate's actual goals. See, Adam disappeared alongside over 3,000 other children, and presumably all of these children were brought back as well. The alternate threat was seemingly beaten after the television and mirror destruction order, but humanity had no idea that this was their plan the whole time. Across Mandela County and several other neighboring counties are thousands of children now grown up who have no idea that they are essentially alternate sleeper agents. This also makes the one quote from Volume 2 make a lot more sense. It was hinted even back then that the alternates had a special plan for Adam, and that Adam in turn was drawn to the alternates. And when the intruder talks about taking the baby Adam away, it sounds like he's talking about the baby Adam that never came home, and not the Adam that he is now confronting through the computer.
Do you remember my touch? I cradled him in my arms. My sweet boy. I took him away.
When Adam was returned home, even as a child, he was noticeably different. When tested with the stress assessment video after these events, he had no reaction to any of the media. The doctor said this could be the result of a phenomena that is occurring in so many children Adam's age, meaning that there are probably many children abducted by the alternates who came back as alternates and also have zero reaction or empathy to the people around them. And this is more speculation, but in the video on metaphysical awareness disorder, it talks about how 97% of cases end in a victim taking their own life, but that the 3% gives hope in reversing the delusion. But what if in reality, it's 100% of human victims that will end up taking their own life as a result of exposure to MAD, and the other 3% don't do so because they are alternates and have no idea otherwise? This makes a bad situation even more hopeless, if true. And in the present day, Adam seems to be completely devoid of empathy, leaving Jonah's body in a ditch, imparting on Evelyn terrible knowledge. But now it reframes our perspective of Adam. He's not a human with borderline sociopathic tendencies, or at least a lack of empathy. He's an alternate that is desperately trying to understand and be human, even if he doesn't realize it on a conscious level. And on the side of the road where Adam's voice starts glitching like crazy, I don't believe this is the alternates tormenting him, because why would they do that? I think rather this is Adam's alternate nature bubbling to the surface, and he doesn't understand that, and so he's scared and confused.
All right. No, messing with my words. He never said that. Shut the fuck up! He never said that. Messing with my words. I've had enough of you! Messing with my words. He never said that. Please, just get the fuck out of my ass!
But one thing I think that's certain is that it is Adam that Gabriel is referring to when he says that he deceived the Mandela Prophet. He is an alternate who grew up human, and even though he chased the alternates all his life, he was never really on their side. The voice in Volume 2 says that Adam has followed the shepherd all his life, and we'll see what this phrase means in future videos, but for now it's enough to know that siding with the shepherd is siding against the alternates.
Did the right thing.
But now the alternates successfully got to him using Dave Lee from Mandela Tech.
Oh, David, you have already done all of my bidding for me.
He developed Face Studio 2, a program that Adam gave all his information and his face to. And I have no idea what the alternates are going to do with that, but it's probably not good. Nevertheless, I still believe that Adam is humanity's best chance at stopping the alternates, but some massive shift is going to have to happen in him for that to be the case. And to this day, this is probably still one of the biggest twists in Mandela Catalog, and probably in my top like 3 moments in the whole series. The world has largely moved on from alternates, not realizing that there is a secret army of alternates living among them. And this also tragically means that all of the children abducted by the alternates never came home. And now Adam, the alternate who stood against the alternates, has become essentially Gabriel's chosen one. The vessel through which Gabriel wants to enact his plan on Earth, whatever that means. Thus giving the name Adam another twisted parallel. Just as the original Adam was the first man, so too is this Adam the first of a new race of alternates. And now he has a choice in front of him. Does he continue to try and follow the shepherd, whatever that means, or does he become the chosen one of the devil? And for our board of characters, we have a few new important people. First, we now know that Sarah is in fact Sarah Heathcliff, the brother to Mark Heathcliff. And then of course there's Evelyn Miller, the employee at Mandela Tech and Adam's ex-girlfriend. And on the alternate side, we have seen Gabriel masquerading around as a man named O'Brien. Or at least we've heard him, we haven't seen him. We saw Gabriel though, boy did we see Gabriel. And we also now know that the Intruder, the Man in the TV, and Stanley are all different manifestations of the Intruder, of 6. In fact, this is speculation that I just came up with while I was rolling the camera, but maybe the reason he's called 6 is because he is one entity with 6 different aspects, and maybe that's where that name comes from. But in that case, we've only seen 3, possibly 4 if you count the unnamed alternate from 333. And if I'm right, that means we only have 2 or 3 versions of him left to go, so woohoo! And that end scene with the fully animated, grotesque, twisted face of the Intruder is still one of my favorite scenes to ever come out of the series. But the story of the Mandela Catalog isn't over yet, and the next entry is very interesting. So in doing research for this video, I've been going through the playlist that is available on Alex Kister's channel, and going through the videos in the order that they're listed there. And after Volume 4, the next entry in the series, according to this playlist, is a video from a completely separate channel called Genesis Apocryphon. The Genesis Apocryphon is a real thing. It was the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls to ever be discovered. It is essentially a retelling of the book of Genesis and of the stories of the patriarchs of both the Jewish and the Christian faith. And I'm not sure if the name of the channel is relevant to the Mandela Catalog in any way, but boy is this video related. This video is called The Beginner's Bible, The Story of Easter Clips, circa 1995. And true to the title, this video is made entirely using clips from the Easter episode of The Beginner's Bible, specifically the story of the resurrection of Jesus. But as we will see, this is very much still the Mandela Catalog. And I'll say right now, both in terms of the visuals as well as the implications of this video for the rest of the series, this may be the most terrifying entry in the Mandela Catalog, at least for me. We open on the Roman soldiers who were charged with guarding the tomb of Jesus. See, Jesus had prophesied before his death that he would rise in 3 days, and so to ensure that he didn't do that, they rolled a heavy stone over the entrance to his tomb and posted guards there 24/7. But then suddenly, with a great rumble, the stone was rolled away from the tomb.
Hey, what's going on around here? How is that stone moving all by itself?
And the guards are awestruck that a stone this size could move on its own. Then one of the guards points to a tree, and seated at the base of the tree is an angel whose face is redacted. I probably don't need to tell you who this is. The guards see this figure and understandably flee in terror. That same day, 3 women are seen traveling to Jesus' tomb with burial spices. These women are Mary of Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the disciple, and a follower of Jesus named Salome, who was present at the crucifixion.
At least I'm pretty sure. The names on the Mandela Catalog wiki are different, and also there's a large amount of discourse, apparently, as to who the three women are. But one of them is definitely Mary of Magdalene. All sources agree on that. They talk amongst themselves, but the audio is muted. And as they're walking, they pass the guards who are fleeing in terror. Mary Magdalene enters the tomb all by herself. Now in the biblical story, an angel appears to Mary saying that Jesus is risen and to go and tell everyone. But in this version, boy, does that not happen. So, yeah. Mary exits the tomb, speaks to the other women in a garbled speech, and then the three disappear. And that's how this video ends. It's very short. Now, a very important detail about this scene that has massive lore implications for the Mandela Catalog is that the face that Mary makes during that scene looks an awful lot like this face from Volume 2. And this brings up, for the first time ever, a terrifying possibility of some hidden power that the false Gabriel has. Whatever communication he shared with Mary in that moment transformed her into an alternate. And then, true to the biblical passage, she goes to tell everyone the news that Gabriel told her. And when she came into contact with the two other women, she transformed them into alternates as well, and they are presumably going to spread this even further. Now, according to the comments section of that video, in this moment, Mary either says, "Ask for forgiveness, Gabriel's returned," or "Ask forgiveness to the fallen angel." And I honestly have no idea which of those is more horrifying to me. The status of Jesus in the Mandela Catalog is very uncertain, but I think we can establish two things. The first and most obvious is that Christianity in the Mandela Catalog is not based on Jesus, as we've established in previous videos. And secondly, he probably didn't raise from the dead just there. That probably didn't happen. Gabriel solidifies his victory and then corrupts the three women who come to visit Jesus at the tomb to spread his cursed message even further. This is a huge detail with massive implications hidden on a second channel, which is fairly devious, Alex. Well played. And this is also not the last time we will be visiting the channel Genesis Apocryphon for more lore. I also saw this brought up in the comments section of that video, but I find it hilarious to think of just like a random Christian looking for clips of the Beginner's Bible, a show that he remembers from Sunday school, and just stumbling upon the Genesis Apocryphon channel, having no idea what the Mandela Catalog is, and just never being the same after that. Like they're just watching Easter videos in their bed or something, like, huh, why is Gabriel's face redacted? I don't know why, I just find that image hilarious. The only thing of note here really hasn't been confirmed, but it's confirmed enough in my eyes that I'm gonna make the bold declaration that I think that the preacher that we saw in Volume 2 is the twisted alternate form of Mary Magdalene, who was corrupted by Gabriel at the tomb of Jesus, who never rose, as you saw. And up next, we go back to Alex Kister's official channel for the next video, the Mandela Catalyst. We start with a video documenting what is referred to as the 2009 Channel 3 incident. In this broadcast, an anchorwoman is talking about a mysterious death outside the St. Gabriel Church. The fact that this church is named after a character who is pretty well established at this point to be Satan in disguise is probably not a good thing. This, of course, as we know, is the body of Dave Lee from Mandela Tech. The anchorwoman is reporting on the scene when the broadcast begins experiencing interference. After seeing that the newsroom is now empty, we briefly get this shot of a faceless figure on the screen before this text is shown. If you were to type in a YouTube video link and then add these digits at the end, you would have found a link to the video that we just talked about from the channel Genesis Apocrypha. Then text appears saying, "No more running away." And after this, the broadcast returns to normal. Next, we see a conversation between Sarah Heathcliff and Evelyn. So I guess Evelyn somehow survived her encounter with the alternate in the police station, so good for her, I guess. Sarah asks if she's heard from Adam lately, to which she responds that it's actually been weeks since she's heard anything from him. Sarah assures her that Adam is probably fine, but I have no idea how or even if she knows that. And before we get a resolution to this, we cut to security footage from Evelyn's house. The door to her room is open, showing nothing but darkness beyond. She calls out Adam's name and surprisingly gets a response back.
Adam?
Evelyn, come here.
What are you doing?
Something I want to show you.
Adam beckons her forward, wanting to show her something. And when she turns on the lights of her room,
Who is that? Adam, who is that?
she sees the distorted face of the messenger staring back at her. She demands to know what this thing is, but Adam doesn't respond. Next, we hear a leaked audio from Bythorn Hospital regarding the autopsy of Dave Lee. We also see this in the post-mortem photo taken, but he was pronounced dead on arrival and the body had no eyes. The two nurses also appear shocked upon examination, one of them saying that brains aren't supposed to do that. And hopefully, we will never have to know what on earth that means. Like, what did Gabriel do to my boy? We then see the roof of a house with Gabriel standing on top of it. And text appears on screen saying, "Wake up, Thatcher. Can you hear me?" So I think we can safely assume whose house this is. Gabriel continues saying, "I am your intuition. Do you hear the screams? Go and see." Which is probably bad. Dashcam footage indicates to us that Thatcher woke up and is now on the road. It is likely that he had an intuitive feeling of where he needed to go that night, but since Gabriel just said, "I am your tuition," he's probably leading Thatcher to something that he shouldn't see. To which, when Thatcher parks, we see a van with the name Bythorn Paranormal Society spray painted on the side. It appears that Gabriel has led Thatcher Davis to the house of Adam Murray. The same Adam Murray who no one has heard from in weeks and recently found out is an alternate. As Thatcher enters the house, the radio comes on and begins reading the first chapter of a story called The Fate of the Jester. And it goes a little something like this. As the boy lay there dormant, all his humanity drained into a murky puddle. Milky eyes cut through the thick blackness of the bedroom, a spectator. He was no longer the hero of the story, just a cog in the machine. And this is a very accurate description of the situation that Adam now finds himself in. He is being stripped of his humanity to make room for the alternates. He is now just a vessel for whatever Gabriel's plan is. Thatcher enters Adam's room and finds it in tatters. A bottle of bleach is visible in the camera, and it is implied that, confronted with the truth of his origins and fearful of what the alternates have planned for him, Adam simply tried to take himself out. Adam's form is being ripped and torn into that of an alternate, and it is clear that this is a very painful process for him, and he begs Thatcher to kill him before he begins to transform. A smiley face is shown on the screen, but what we hear is anything but friendly. And that's where the Mandela Catalyst ends. It seems that Adam is on the verge of something terrible, and we'll get clues as to what that is later. It also seems that Thatcher was placed on the scene by Gabriel himself. So whatever happens next is very likely part of his plan in some way. I also kind of doubt that Evelyn is alive from here on out, at least not the Evelyn that we know. I don't think it's a coincidence that this video and the last video are linked together. We were introduced to the idea that Gabriel corrupted Mary Magdalene, turning her into an alternate, and that she has the ability to turn other women into alternates. It is largely theorized by the community and by myself that this alternate is Mary Magdalene, and this alternate happens to appear to Evelyn. I would wager that if Evelyn was not killed during this encounter, that she was corrupted and turned into an alternate by the preacher, by Mary herself. In a twisted but poetic way, this would also kind of add to the parallel that has been established at this point between Adam and Evelyn and Adam and Eve. But moving on to the next video, Presto. This tape begins with a clearance sale at Mandela Tech as they are going out of business. We then see a conversation between Sarah and Evelyn where it is apparent that Sarah is tapping into security cameras across Mandela County, specifically outside of Mandela Tech. She's doing this for Evelyn, who is looking for a middle-aged man with a mustache that looks cartoonishly fake. Of course, this is referring to Dave Lee.
Probably wearing his lucky flannel again, sunglasses. Oh, and he has the most fake-looking mustache ever. You'll know it when you see it.
A lot of the themes of the Mandela Catalog are very serious and very horrifying, so I like that there's at least a little bit of campiness in Dave Lee. I mean, look at him. It's Alex Kister with a Spirit Halloween mustache on it. It's incredible. I believe this conversation takes place before the events of the last video because both Dave and Evelyn are still alive. Then we see Thatcher's dash cam again, but this time we hear Adam coughing and sputtering in the back. It seems that Thatcher is taking him in, hoping to get answers. And back online in the present, Evelyn is recounting the horrifying events of the last video to Sarah.
So I turned on the light switch and it was just staring into my soul, and I was so confused because I didn't know if he was just tricking me again.
So maybe she is alive? I really don't know at this point. The call is interrupted and a pop-up says that they have been automatically connected to the cameras in the Mandela County Police Station. This is likely the alternates wanting Sarah to see whatever's about to happen. She sees Thatcher talking with Adam, who is still mid-transformation into an alternate at this point.
I wish there was something more I could do for you. I know you're in a lot of pain right now. No. What you want?
He's tried to make Adam as comfortable as possible, but nothing could alleviate the sensation of all of Adam's bones being broken and stretched all at once. And Thatcher asks Adam what happened. He talks about founding the Bythorn Paranormal Society with Sarah, but how she lost interest in these investigations. He talks about Jonah, who was willing to go on these hunts with him, but how Adam really hated him.
I had to find a replacement, and I hated him.
Which, yeah, that was pretty obvious. And of course he recalls the incident at the house with Jonah.
We got an appointment from a woman, and we went to her house that night. Okay. What happened?
And after having an attack from his alternate nature, Adam tells Thatcher that he talked to someone while in the house. When Thatcher asks if Adam can describe these people, he says that he can't. He says that it's his fault that Jonah died, which is honestly about the most remorse I've seen from Adam regarding Jonah.
Jonah. I'm paying the price.
Adam finally says that he knew this would happen. Whether he's talking about this conversation with Thatcher or Jonah's death is unclear. And that's when Thatcher asks him who told Adam that these events would transpire.
I knew this would happen. He told me. Who told you? God.
We cut to black, and the German song Der Doppelganger starts playing, as a title card for something called An Urban Tragedy appears on screen. The text appears above Mandela Tech building saying, Thatcher Davis dooms all. We see the faces of the intruder and the faceless alternate, as well as the last CRT television in all of Wisconsin. And more text appears that addresses Thatcher directly, saying, You were so caught up in your own volition that you never noticed your world turning into a gray and twisted version of its former self. And that's how Presto ends. It's unclear how at this point, but if this voice is to be believed, Thatcher's actions in this last video have somehow fallen right into Gabriel's plan and doomed humanity as we know it. This makes sense considering that Gabriel orchestrated the encounter between Thatcher and Adam entirely. He even orchestrated Sarah bearing witness to this conversation between Thatcher and Adam, in which Adam claims to have talked to God. Maybe this is why Gabriel refers to Adam as the Mandela prophet, as the prophets in the Old Testament of the Bible were people who were communicated to directly by God. We don't have all the pieces yet, but I believe that Gabriel's plan is unfolding exactly as he planned it. And it seems that everyone in Mandela County can't help but fall right into place for this plan. But now for the next video of this series, we return to the channel Genesis Apocryphon. And the video is cryptically titled 1-1909-221A. 221 is also an angel number often associated with the idea of guardian angels. Guardian angel is something that Thatcher called Ruth Weaver in a previous video.
Weaver, my guardian angel, in a sense. I threw her to the flames in an act of self-preservation.
And this may be relevant, but I'll get to that. This is a short video with very few visuals. The first thing we see is an extremely low quality on-air sign. This entire video is extremely low quality, as you will find out. And according to a user in the comments, this same image once existed on the Mandela Tech website, a very real website that was part of the overall Mandela Catalog ARG. And apparently on this website, accompanying the on-air sign, was a TV that was flashing in Morse code. And the message that this TV was flashing simply said, "I'm still here, Thatcher. I miss you." Does this mean that Ruth Weaver is still alive? I have no idea, but I'd like to believe so, and that's insanely cool if it is. It would be really cool considering the whole guardian angel thing, and then the title of this video is in reference to guardian angels, and Thatcher called Ruth his guardian angel. I just think that'd be a really cool idea. We then see a couple of drawings that are attributed to Adam Murray. The first is of the angel Gabriel in his twisted form, and the next is of the intruder. We then see a very low poly version of what we can assume to be St. Gabriel Church, and text scrolls by saying, "The answers lie beneath." What does that mean? I have absolutely no idea. Maybe they just need to grab a shovel and dig up the church. This video is a mystery, and I'm not smart enough to solve it with the pieces I have available. So let's move on to the next video, which is very special to me. This video is called 238, and it's a Vine compilation. Literally, most of this video is just a collection of Vines, the same Vines that I would watch with my friends all the way back in high school.
What the fuck, Richard?
Well, hello, Mr. Kitty.
Kitty, where's you going? Kitty, come back here, Mr. Kitty. Kitty, where you going?
However, after a vine of Pennywise the Clown drinking vodka straight from the bottle, things get weird again. We see a door slightly ajar. Then as we cut to the front of the house, a radio comes on. We see a photo of the Murray family, Lynn, Jude, and Adam. Then a clock that is on the time 6:08. According to Alex, the time on this clock is supposedly subtle foreshadowing for a future episode of the Mandela Catalog. So keep that in mind when he releases his next video, and I probably have to take back all of the theories that I've crafted throughout this video. We then go back to that door as it closes. Next is a handheld shot of someone walking through the house. As this person looks down a hallway, the lights at the end turn off on their own. Undeterred, this person walks down the hallway. They enter the dining room, but nothing is visible. We then cut to what appears to be an image of a butterfly, and then back to the clock. But this time it reads 7:13. The second hand gets to 53 seconds, then it stops entirely. Really, it stops between 52 and 53 seconds. Make of that what you will. We cut to a lamp which begins flickering before it burns out entirely. We then see a door handle, and then after a moment, the handle turns. And then the Vine compilation resumes. Now I know what you're probably thinking, and yes, that absolutely was my favorite Vine back in 2014. Pretty sure that was more than 7 seconds, bucko. I'm on to you. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I find it very suspicious that the Vine that it cuts to after this whole sequence is the one of the woman running away from the guy.
Why are you running? Why are you?
Something tells me that the cameraman in this video ended up running too. This is another example of the Mandela Catalog adopting a new medium in order to showcase the era in which this episode takes place. Vine was started in 2012, so it's very likely that this episode takes place sometime after that point. The bar on the side says Funniest Vine Comp 2015, so I think we can reasonably assume that the video takes place in 2015. It's a really creative and frankly hilarious way of adding a new piece to the puzzle. And that's all I really have to say about this entry, so let's move on to the 5th volume of the Mandela Catalog. The main point of this video is to answer the big question that I had about this series so far, and that is, what on earth happened to Jude Murray, the father of Adam? All we know really is that he called 911 after the intruder appeared in his house and took his child, and then he basically just falls out of the story forever. I had presumed that he died in this incident, but we were never shown a body, which I found suspicious. And this video answers that question, along with giving us more terrifying visuals and religious themes that we've come to expect from Alex thus far. And before we begin talking about the video, in preparation for the release of Volume 5, Alex changed the description of the video talking about metaphysical awareness disorder to be a conversation between Jude Murray and his doctor. The doctor begins saying, "A recurring dream, maybe? Yeah, I guess. Have you been dealing with much stress lately? A little bit. Tell me about the dream." "It's always the same. It goes like this. I'm in a bedroom, and I wake up from someone talking from somewhere in the room. Or sometimes, I'll look out the window and see something outside. Either way, I always feel compelled to walk out of my bedroom and investigate. I would think after having this dream 100 times that I would start to expect it, but I don't. I never want to investigate it, and I know it, but my body takes control. The walk through the house always makes me feel the worst dread I've felt in my life. Like the kind of fear that you only feel in nightmares. I've never been able to remember what happens from that point on. It's all a blur to me. I never wake up in a sweat or screaming. I just don't remember. I only remember the sensation. I'm afraid to fall asleep. I would rather die." Jude has been tormented by these dreams for a prolonged period, and it's to the point that he'd rather just not sleep at all. And given that this was posted in the description for the video about metaphysical awareness disorder, he is very likely suffering from this condition. And also his symptoms line up perfectly. This is a textbook case of mad, really. So how does he deal with this and all the other horrible things happening around him? Let's find out, shall we? We begin by once again hearing the conversation between Thatcher Davis and Jude Murray on the night. And then the phone that Jude was calling from is dropped. We are back in the Murray household on the night that Adam was taken. The only light is from the flicker of the TV that the intruder used to enter the home. And I love some of these shots, which are very reminiscent of the horror film Skinamarink. And silhouetted on the wall, of course, we see the body of Lynn Murray. Faced with an abducted son, a deceased wife, and an incomprehensible horror somewhere in his house, Jude Murray runs away. We then cut to a tape from the as yet very enigmatic United States Department of Temporal Phenomena. Apparently, 28 agents have been assigned to observe what they call a temporal bleed in Mandela County. In other words, they're looking for evidence of unusual activity. The first noteworthy event is frequent sightings of an unregistered Ford Taurus passing by the same location over the course of 11 days. Despite being captured numerous times over the course of 11 days driving in one direction, it is never observed returning from the other direction. And the second event is samples collected by an agent Jay Booker from the house of Nicholas Berenger. Now, Nicholas Berenger briefly appeared in Volume 1. This was him. So Nick is probably an alternate, and according to Alex, his alternate is going to be a major protagonist going into Act 3 of the Mandela Catalogue. And the agent made record of several anomalies in the house of Nicholas Berenger, including 2 photos and 1 video. The first photo is probably concerning, but don't worry, the second one is probably worse. And finally, the video is pretty uneventful. I'm just kidding, it's way worse. And as a quick aside, because I wanted to talk about this, the artist behind the photos and the video just shown, as well as several other alternate appearances in this episode, goes by Draxum online. I hope I'm saying that right. And she does amazing horror artwork, whether it's pieces of fan art for the Mandela Catalogue or other properties, or her own original creations. And I've been following her for quite some time because I love horror artwork, and I found her through some of her fan art of the Mandela Catalogue. And so it's really cool seeing her go from doing fan art of the series to being brought on as part of the team for this video. And the way she interprets the alternates in her style is just so cool. So if you're not following her on Instagram or Twitter or something, you're doing yourself a disservice. I would absolutely go and do that. We are then shown Agent Booker's interpretation of the alternate that he saw, which is basically just Nightmare Fuel but in 4K. So yeah, Nicholas Berenger, definitely an alternate. Other accounts of anomalies he saw in the house include a guy with no eyes, a guy that is basically just eyes, and then this alternate. These alternates were not aggressive, they merely observed Agent Booker the entire time he was there, which honestly sounds way worse. And after this report, we get an ad for a relocation service, one that advertises itself specifically to people who are desperately looking to get away from just all of it. And I'll go ahead and say it right now, after the incident at the Murray household, Jude contacted this service for himself. He then received a handwritten note with instructions on what to do next. Highway 368 between exits 81 and 82. There's a small patch of empty space in the cornfield heading westbound. Park your car in the nearby ditch and leave your keys in the glove box. Take any other valuable items with you. The empty space in the cornfields is the beginning of a path that eventually leads to a large, open plain. You will see a structure in the center of this plain. This is your safe house that you must remain within until you are relocated. We are then shown the safe house itself. Jude arrives and walks around the house. And this safe house very much reminds me of basically every A-frame cabin I've ever been in. The tight spaces, the 70s wood panel walls, it's very nostalgic, but also terrifying considering it's the Mandela Catalog, and there's plenty of dark spaces to be found in this cabin. He makes his bed in the attic, and it's probably important / not good that there's a CRT television in the room with him. This house looks about as cozy as any other witness protection house, I imagine. We then get one of those commercials that you see for new types of medication. You know, the kind that has a huge list of horrific side effects, but the B-roll is all just like smiling white people. And I love these initial shots of the poor soul of this commercial, aka Alex. He just looks so scared, which feels real good considering what he's put me through throughout this series. That felt pretty good to witness.
Heard something you wish you didn't? Do you find yourself constantly held back by irrational fear? Maybe you saw something you can't forget. Now, there is a solution.
This ad is for a new drug called Timorel. This is a fictional drug for the series that exists within the much more real benzodiazepine drug family. Benzodiazepine drugs are largely used to treat anxiety as well as regulate seizures, and Timorel is advertised in this episode as combating anxiety as well as regulating hyperactivity in the brain. And as with most of these kinds of medication commercials, it comes with a litany of side effects. These side effects include dizziness, hallucinations, confusion, impaired judgment, uncontrollable body movements, whatever that means. This anti-anxiety medication can also sometimes worsen your anxiety or depression, which that seems counterproductive. We then cut to a claymation biblical cartoon that is an original creation by the team of the Mandela Catalog. See, up until this point, all of the biblical sections of the story were clips from the Beginner's Bible, which was a separate series that ran a long time ago. But this scene was all original with handmade clay models from the team. This is also not a scene taken from the Bible, but the era that it takes place in as well as the religious themes make it feel like a biblical story even though it's not any story that happens in the Bible. In this, a shepherd is tending to his flock and is sad to see that one of his young lambs died during the night. And as he goes to sleep, he apologizes to the lamb, saying he tried his best.
I tried my hardest. I am sorry. Please forgive me.
I heard you praying.
And as someone who honestly wasn't expecting Gabriel to pop up in this moment, yeah, that was terrifying. Here I am just minding my own business watching a claymation, and then Gabriel shows up like that was probably the worst jump scare of the whole series. Just the iconic pose and the fact that you can't see his face. Ugh.
You are the Holy Spirit.
You spoke to me. And now I am here.
Notice how he dodges the question there, only saying that he arrived when the shepherd called. See, I feel like this is absolutely something that the devil would do if he was cosplaying as an angel or God or something. The shepherd asks if he's forgiven, to which Gabriel asks, why would he need forgiveness?
Am I forgiven?
For what?
My...
There is the dead lamb, grazing with the flock, looking healthier than ever. And this moment, even though I've watched it so many times at this point, still gives me goosebumps. Even talking about it now gives me goosebumps. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered a miracle, but what is it called when Satan appears at your door and performs a miracle in front of you? We then go back to Jude Murray in the safe house, and he gets a call from a representative of the relocation services. They're sending a driver to pick him up in a Ford Taurus, likely the same Ford Taurus that the Department of Temporal Phenomena has been keeping an eye on. The man also advises him to start making calls to friends, relatives, doctors, basically anyone who would notice that he just mysteriously disappeared. And so the first person he calls is his doctor. The doctor asks if there's been any improvements with the young Adam. Remember, this is the same doctor that gave Adam the stress assessment test that came back with no results. Because, as we know, and as Jude is probably suspecting at this point, his son is not the same. But obviously the doctor has no idea that there's something seriously wrong with Adam, and he doesn't know that Jude is now ducking out of the responsibility of looking after this seeming imposter.
Well, that's the thing. Lynn and I finally closed on that house. You know, the one where the little ranch, and we'll be moving doctors. We'll be moving.
That is just great. Just keep me updated. I'll be able to transfer your prescription, no problem.
And it's never explicitly said here, but I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the prescription he's talking about is for Timaril, to help treat Jude for his nightmares and insomnia, as well as to cope with the tragedy of losing his family. Jude Murray is now on Timaril. And I don't know exactly how, but I just know that this drug is somehow linked to the alternates and the relocation service. It's all connected. I just don't know how. Maybe the drug compels the people on it to employ the relocation services, and that has something to do with the alternates? I don't know. Potentially, it can cause impaired judgment, which might cause people to uproot their lives and employ the use of this relocation service to do so. Jude stays up until 4:30 a.m., the time that he is supposed to be picked up by his driver, and he walks downstairs but freezes when he sees another man in the house with him. We then cut back to the claymation cartoon. The shepherd is greatly troubled. His lamb is alive and healthy, but something about it doesn't feel right. And as he sits there deep in thought, a woman calls out.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Are you the shepherd?
Yes. Who are you?
I'm Jane. I'm the farmer.
And she asks if he has grain for his sheep. Her crops were ruined and she needs grain. He gives her grain, but Jane can tell that the shepherd is troubled.
What is the matter?
You know animals, don't you? What is the matter with my little one?
Oh my, it is beautiful, my friend. You are truly blessed.
What do you mean? It is clearly not healthy.
Well, what do I know? I am no shepherd after all. I must get back to work.
Jane leaves, but invites the farmer to visit her sometime that night. The shepherd looks up at the sky and asks why him, but there are no answers. And then the color slowly begins to drain from the sky. He begins to walk home when he suddenly stumbles. And suddenly, he is in a desert that seems to stretch on forever, and he is bound to chains on his ankles that grow heavier with every step. This visual is pulled directly out of the poem from Overthrown. Now trapped in this infinite desert, the shepherd screams at the sky.
How do I know you are holy?
This brings to mind the quote from Mark Heathcliff, "Who have I been praying to this whole time?" A being that looked like the Holy Spirit appeared to him and healed his lamb, but something about the lamb is different, and the farmer can sense it. The shepherd can sense it. He's not a farmer. And the shepherd begins to confront the idea of the being that appeared to him. What if this figure was not as holy as he appeared to be? He unwittingly gave himself over to this being and is now trapped, at least symbolically. And back at the safe house, the relocation service representative asks Jude how the drive is going, and Jude confesses that he never got in the car because there was someone at the door. And at this we get a shot of Jude Murray's prescription bottle, which confirms to us that he is indeed on Temeril. It also reveals to us that his full legal name is Judas Murray, being named after the man who betrayed Jesus and ultimately led to his death is probably not a good thing. The man in the phone is furious with Jude. A lot of effort went into this operation and Jude messed it up. And it's possible that the Temeril was responsible for this. Maybe he was paralyzed with indecision. Maybe the man at the door was a hallucination. Or at least maybe the alternates want Jude to think that the man was a hallucination instead of being an alternate. The guy specifically says that there was a whole community of people up there waiting for him.
An entire community of the kindest people I know were ready to welcome you. They were so excited to meet you, Jude.
And this line to me doesn't sound right. To me, it feels like the alternates wanted Jude to be with them, but in his inaction, he betrayed that purpose. And maybe that's the Judas parallel. The alternates had a plan for Jude, but he betrayed them by not doing anything. And the guy on the other side of the phone starts ripping into Jude before finally telling him to do the world a favor, which I think we all know what that means. During this, a blurry shot of the note given to Jude is shown, and it's very blurry, but it definitely looks like the note was signed by a man named O'Brien, which the last person named O'Brien in this series ended up being Satan in disguise, so I think we can reasonably assume that this is the same O'Brien. In fact, this is likely O'Brien on the phone with Jude trying to take him away, but when Jude refuses and betrays him, he has nothing left to say but do the world a favor. And later, Jude hears a knock at the door. He opens the door and sees Lieutenant Thatcher Davis.
Can I help you?
Hi, Lieutenant Davis, MCPD.
We didn't call for the police. Everything's okay here.
We're just doing routine checkups around town. It's a requirement from the state.
Thatcher tells him that he's performing routine checkups on random houses in the middle of nowhere, I guess. Also, the way that Thatcher talks in this moment is very unnatural, even for someone doing door-to-door work. Thatcher asks Jude if he knows about the television and mirror destruction order.
Can I help you with anything?
Are you aware of the television and mirror destruction order?
Well, I'm house sitting, and yeah, I'm aware of it, but all good here.
Good. Always nice to meet another upstanding citizen. I hope you and your family have a nice day.
Thanks, officer.
And after this very unnatural conversation, Thatcher leaves. And I'll go ahead and say it right now, this is definitely the alternate that assumed Thatcher's identity in 333. Not only does this make sense in the timeline, but it also doesn't make sense that Thatcher at this point would be going door to door talking like this to people. Jude sits in front of the TV trying to distract himself. And while he sits there, a PSA is played on the television, an actual PSA that would play during the 80s and the 90s. I think the 90s mainly.
Just a little bit of light rain, occasional storms starting to build in Arizona too.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
And this is especially devastating for Jude because he truly has no idea where his son is. Because whatever child was returned to him may have looked like his son, but he knew deep down that it wasn't. And he tries to fall asleep in front of the TV, but every time he closes his eyes, he sees the man that was in the house at 4:30 p.m. a.m., not p.m. And then in his mind, he sees Gabriel himself, who says,
It was supposed to be you.
Everything that we've seen of Gabriel's plan has gone exactly as he envisioned it, except for this one thing. I believe that the only hiccup in Gabriel's plan, or at least the thing that he'd never expected, is that it was Lynn Murray who took her own life that night, and not Jude. And it's also made abundantly clear that he is not alone in this house. We then cut back to the claymation story where the shepherd is still trapped in this purgatory. As he tries to walk against the chains, two mouths appear in the sand and speak to him. The first mouth talks of the host of angels who appeared to the shepherds in the nativity story, but it quickly turns into the narrative that we saw in Overthrown.
And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Night fell upon them in an instant, and all the color was drained from the world. An angel appeared to them, and they were terrified. The angel fooled them, just like he planned. But there was more work to be done.
And the second mouth's message is a lot more hopeful.
It does not need to be that way. You are not the first. There are so many more. Nothing has been done yet. He has a lot of convincing to do. Until then, trust nobody. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me?
The shepherd was not the first to be deceived, and Gabriel still has a lot more deception to do before his plan is complete. But until the appointed time, the shepherd can trust no one. This is what Gabriel meant in Volume 4, and what the alternate meant to Adam in Volume 2 when they said that they were following the shepherd. See, my initial theory when I first heard of the idea of the shepherd in the Mandela Catalog was that they were referring to God, the real God, not the false Gabriel. It now seems more likely that what they are referring to when they say follow the shepherd is following the example of Jude. In other words, not trusting the people around them and not giving in to the alternates. In essence, following the shepherd means reversing the delusion through sheer willpower. And the shepherd wakes up from this walking nightmare to find that he is in the farmer's home. The shepherd is fearful, knowing that the angel is near, and then...
Where am I? What do you mean? You're in my home. You've been here for a while.
He's here.
What?
I know his presence.
Who's he? Everybody left town. It's just you and me. Just what I prayed for. Look at me. What's wrong?
Please, no.
And this was horrific, to say the least, when I first watched it. He opens his eyes and sees that the farmer is now dead on the floor. He bursts out of her house and looks to his farm, and he sees his lamb, only it has been mutated and twisted. The angel behind the shepherd reaches out to him, and then we cut back to Jude in the safe house. He wakes up, and when he looks at the TV, he sees the window to the room that he's staying in. And now on the floor there's a baby monitor that cries can be heard from. This is presumably Adam, or at least the thing pretending to be Adam. Jude wanders the house knowing that something is here. He peeks around a corner, and sure enough, This is the alternate of Nicholas Berenger from the beginning of the volume. The front door is locked, but unfortunately for Jude, the back door is wide open. Jude stumbles up the stairs being pursued by this alternate. And this may be one of my favorite interpretations of the alternates in live action. So huge shout out to Draxum and the entire team who worked on this episode. He demands to know what this alternate wants.
What do you want from me? It's you! It's fucking you! What the fuck do you want from me? You've taken everything from me! You've taken my wife! You've taken my fucking child! What do you want to kill me? Fucking kill me! I've got nothing!
The alternates have taken everything from Jude except his life, and they're here to collect on that. He is bombarded by the alternates with thoughts of self-buy. It seems now that the alternates want him to enact the final parallel to Judas from the Bible. Jude's bottle of pills is open on the floor, and we hear him sputtering and crying for help. It appears that in this moment, under immense pressure, he gave up and took a bunch of his pills at once.
Please. Someone. Please. God. Please. Help.
And this is how the story of Jude Murray ends. The big takeaway from this video that I found really cool is that the story of the shepherd is the story of Jude. His son was taken away from him, just as the shepherd's lamb died. But then a miracle happened, and Adam was returned. He seemed healthy, but on some instinctual level, Jude knew that there was something wrong with him.
You are truly blessed.
What do you mean? It is clearly not healthy.
The farmer is Lynn Murray, who, in the moment that everything went wrong, died. She also invited the shepherd over to her house that night, which, in the story of the Mandela Catalogue, the two were divorced, but she had asked him to come over to the house on that night when everything happened. And then there's this shot where it almost looks like Gabriel is puppeteering the farmer in this moment. And I think very horrifically that this may imply that Jude was visited by Lynn Murray after her death. See, all the way back at the beginning of the Mandela Catalogue, or at least close to the beginning, we got this one frame of a censored bar saying victim's corpse seen being tampered with by unseen force. And so I believe that some alternate force, whether it was Gabriel or the Intruder or one of many other alternates, used the body of Lynn Murray and began torturing Jude somehow. Not just taking on her form, but taking her body entirely. This is a horrific concept that I only have vague theories about that I just mentioned here. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this moment and connect it back to that frame from, I think it was Intruder Alert, but I believe that this is a solid theory. And of course, the lamb mutating at the end is evidence that Jude was right. Adam was truly dead, and in his stead was sent back an alternate. And here we have one new character mentioned, as well as the return of someone from the very beginning of the series. First, of course, we have Agent J. Booker from the Department of Temporal Phenomena, and on the alternate side, we have the return of the alternate of Nicholas Berenger, or N. And we now have only one video left as of recording this in the Mandela Catalog series, a video that I myself had not watched until I sat down to write the script for this video. And the setup for this video is crazy because the entire thing is a screen recording of TikTok. This is Unraveling Part 1. Part 2 is not out yet as of recording this, but it sounds like Alex is planning on lining the release of that up for around Halloween, so already this video is going to be outdated on arrival. Whoever is screen recording this video goes to the search bar in TikTok and types "all dark, all gone" with no spaces. This takes them to an account that is not following anybody and has 0 followers. This account has one video with a little over 500 views. And it appears to be a normal get ready with me video, but the face of the person doing it is censored. It's a very normal makeup tutorial getting ready for the day.
And then I use concealer and I just do like a little under my eyes, and then if there's like any spots, like dark spots. Hey guys, welcome back to another video.
The video ends abruptly like this mid-sentence and then goes back to the beginning. There were a couple of frame drops during the second loop around, but when I put them into Photoshop, I couldn't find anything special, so I think that's just actual, like, dropped frames. Then the video is looped a third time, and in this one nothing unusual happens except that the background music seems to loop and glitch.
Then I just mix that together and put it on my face, and then I use my primer. That, like,
and then the fourth time playing this video, the video seems to glitch entirely.
Episode, we are going to be doing a get ready with me.
And then the fourth time, the video keeps freezing entirely. It resumes as normal after a while, but now the text is gone. The music is also more distorted and the picture is desaturated. There's also what sounds like a low-pitched voice, which the community agrees is saying the phrase, "all dark, all gone."
First, I start out by using niacinamide. Then I take my moisturizer mixed with the bronzing drops. Then I just mix that together and put it on my face. Okay, then I use my primer, put that like under my eyes mostly. And then I use concealer.
And it cuts to black with looping music, but this time a face is briefly visible on the screen.
And then if there's like any spots, like dark spots. In this episode, we are going to be doing a get ready with me.
And in the final loop of this video, we very clearly see some movement behind this person at the mirror. And the community has theorized that this is the angel Gabriel himself, caught in 4K on this person's phone. We then cut to what appears to be the same camera angle, but this time at night. The woman is gone, but there is a face in the mirror, and the voiceover from the video is repeating without this woman even being there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In today's episode, we are going to do a get ready with me.
The camera then starts turning towards the bed, and then the video abruptly ends. And that is the entirety of the Mandela Catalog up until this point. Unless part 2 of Unraveling has been released by the time this video is out, in which case you haven't seen anything. Now there are 3 main takeaways from this last video. Firstly, since this is on TikTok, it can be well established that this video takes place relatively close to the modern day. And that means, secondarily, the alternates are in fact still around in the modern day. And the third takeaway is that TikTokers need to remember the television and mirror destruction order. It's also been theorized by the community that this TikToker is living in the house of the deceased Mark Heathcliff, which, as we know, his house is infested with alternates at this point. And now that we've gone through the entirety of the Mandela Catalog, and hopefully I've conveyed to you how cool and how terrifying that I think this series is, I want to now discuss the timeline of the Mandela Catalog and try and place the events that we just talked about in chronological order. Of course, I have this section separate from the main timeline that covers all of the biblical stories that Gabriel twisted. First, we have Gabriel corrupting Adam in the garden. Then Gabriel forces Noah to bring an alternate aboard the ark. And then Jesus is born, and that's where Gabriel asserts himself as the one true savior and appears to the shepherds and that whole thing. And then roughly 30 years after this, Jesus is crucified, and I don't believe he was raised from the dead. And this is also when Gabriel corrupts Mary Magdalene, who in turn corrupts the other women at the tomb, and then this just keeps on spreading. And then the rest of the timeline of the Mandela Catalog takes place between the years 1974 and the present day, roughly, beginning with the birth of Mark Heathcliff on July 12th, 1974. It was July 24th, sorry, my notes are on my computer just over there. And in 1978, a young Mark Heathcliff went to his parents' bedroom, but before he got there, he encountered the intruder in his house. And as far as we know, nothing came of that. Maybe that'll change later though. That'd be crazy if Mark was revealed to be an alternate that whole time, but then he died, so I guess not. And then in 1981, the United States Department of Temporal Phenomena was established, as well as Mandela Tech being founded. Now, because the department's only job as far as we know is to monitor and combat the alternate threat, we can reasonably assume that around 1981 the alternates were becoming a large threat, or at least a threat big enough that the government couldn't ignore it. And they produced a series of tapes and PSAs regarding the alternates, which were shown largely in Volume 1. And in 1982, cases of metaphysical awareness disorder were on the rise, and so the Department of Temporal Phenomena began releasing tapes on how to combat this disease. And in 1988, both Adam Murray and Jonah Marshall are born. Adam being born on January 18th and Jonah being born on March 7th. And then roughly a year later, Sarah Heathcliff is born. The date is unknown. And in 1990, Evelyn Miller is born, and Lynn and Jude Murray get married. Isn't that nice? I have them in a little heart there. And then in 1992, the alternates really began making their move. In fact, so much happened in the year 1992 alone that I couldn't fit it on the other timeline and had to make a completely separate timeline just for that. As a little peek behind the curtain, I've been filming this video for like half a month now, and this is my last day of shooting, so then I can finally get the whole video together and get it up for you all on the 30th. It is currently the 20th, so boy do I have my work cut out for me. So in the year 1992, 5,000 people die in Mandela County alone. It gets so bad that the Department of Temporal Phenomena begins re-releasing their old PSA tapes in order to desperately try and inform the public on what they're supposed to do. But it appears though that the alternates have corrupted these tapes in some way, as we saw in earlier videos. And they're likely doing this in order to try and spread misinformation to the public so that people don't know what information they can trust. It also appears that around this time the police started sharing tapes internally saying that they can't help callers reporting an alternate encounter, because presumably they were just losing too many people to the alternates and trying to stop them. And on April the 4th of that year, Thatcher Davis and Ruth Weaver are both promoted to lieutenant and sergeant respectively. And not much else happens until August, when Lynn and Jude get a divorce on the 29th. And on the 30th, Mark's paranoia starts getting the best of him. He begins recording himself in his house, and when he's out and about, paranoid that the alternates are watching him, as we see in the tape exhibition. Until finally, on September 13th, Mark goes to Caesar's house, and an alternate follows him home, which of course torments him for days on end until the 15th, when Mark eventually takes his own life. Having recorded a ton of audio and video tapes of his encounter with the alternates that we've seen throughout the series, as well as recording his thoughts in his diary of reassurances. And then 6 days later, on the 21st, Thatcher Davis gets a call from Mark's school regarding his absence and visits the house to see what's wrong. And as it turns out, what's wrong is that he's dead. Thatcher pores over all the evidence gathered from the house and begins obsessing over this case. And then on an unspecified date after this point, we get the Intruder incident, which I had to put over here. This is, of course, where the Intruder abducted over 3,000 children across several counties, including Mandela County. And it is also this same day, in the same incident, that we get the Murray household incident. This is where Stanley appears on the TV to the young Adam Murray and convinces him to manifest an alternate in his house. He is then abducted from the home, and Lynn, distraught at the sight of her missing infant, takes her own life, and Jude calls 911, being picked up by Thatcher Davis, and then flees the scene. Thatcher and Weaver investigate the house, to which they encounter the alternate. Thatcher runs, but Ruth tragically dies in the house. Thatcher calls for backup from neighboring counties, but because over 3,000 children were just abducted, they've probably got their hands full. And at MCPD headquarters, he is attacked by the same alternate from the household, but instead of killing Thatcher, it replaces him and allows him to get away. This, of course, forces Thatcher to go into hiding for, ever, basically. And it is sometime after this that the events of Volume 5 take place. Adam is supposedly returned, and Jude tries his best to take care of the child, but it becomes clear from Adam's unusual behavior that this is not his son. And he is also constantly tormented with nightmares, seeking medication from his doctor, specifically Timaril. He's probably suffering from MAD. Did I mention that? He's suffering from MAD, I bet. He gets put on Timaril and eventually decides that he needs to escape, and he does this by employing the Midwestern Relocation Services, which I've already stated, I believe the relocation service is just a ploy by the alternates to kill more people. For some reason. The alternates try and get him to move, but when he refuses, they just go into the house and kill him. And sometime after this, Thatcher, who is now in hiding, employs the services of Dave Lee from Mandela Tech to restore old tapes that were recovered from the Murray house, and probably also from Mark's house. And this is how we as an audience are able to view some of the tapes that exist within the Mandela Catalog, such as the toddler stress assessment video, the Might of the Subconscious tape, and of course, Overthrown. And now back to the actual timeline that I was talking about about an hour ago. We now move on to the 2000s and the dawn of the digital age. At an unspecified time in the early 2000s, Dave Lee meets a man by the name of O'Brien, who, as we know, is Gabriel in disguise. And sometime after this, Mandela Tech launches Face Studio 2, which does imply that there was a Face Studio 1 before this, but it's not mentioned in the series, so I'm not including it here. And at an unspecified date in 2007, Sarah founds the Bythorn Paranormal Club and begins looking for a partner to essentially go ghost hunting with. And on July 14th, Adam reaches out to Sarah about joining the club, which is officially rebranded as the Bythorn Paranormal Society. And a mere 4 days later, Adam takes Sarah to an active crime scene and traumatizes her for life. Sarah was spooked by the investigation and told Adam that he'd need to find a partner, and so on July 17th, Adam Murray meets Jonah Marshall, and the two begin going on escapades together. And then we come to 2009, where a bunch of stuff also happened. And so much happened in January of 2009 alone that I made another separate whiteboard just for the occasion. I tried to find a bigger whiteboard at the store, but apparently Walmart only sells whiteboards this big or smaller. On the 12th, Adam and Jonah get a call from an unknown woman asking if they can go and help her ghost cat in her house. This, of course, is an alternate luring them both to the house of Cesar Torres, and they both take the bait. And then the events of Volume 2 happen, culminating on the 13th, where Adam visits the basement and is communed with by the alternates, and Jonah flees in terror and is murdered by the alternates. In the night, the alternates try and help Adam to recognize them, because he's an alternate, and Jonah gets psychologically tortured in the van. After the alternates communicate with Adam, he walks for miles down the highway until he comes across the vehicle and Jonah's dead body, where he leaves him there and drives off into the sunset scot-free. The alternates also either start messing with Adam, or Adam's alternate nature starts bubbling to the surface, where his voice starts glitching and he starts freaking out. Adam messages Sarah about Jonah's death and she loses it on him, very understandably. and tells him to make a memorial video, to which he puts in the least amount of effort possible, which charmed as always. Adam then of course receives an anonymous message from who we find out is the Intruder. And around this time, Dave Lee also closes Mandela Tech for good, fires Evelyn, and takes O'Brien up on his offer to get a position at the church, which is a bad thing in this universe. I think I've pretty well established that. He calls Thatcher and basically tells him to move on and find peace, even though the only person who ever cared about him is dead, and he's been holding on to it for decades at this point. And during this stretch of time, Evelyn is attacked twice by the alternates, once at MCPD headquarters, and the second time being at her own home. And she somehow survives both times, or in the second time is corrupted by the preacher, because I'm still at least half on board with that theory. And of course, Dave arrives at the St. Gabriel Church, where he is visited by Gabriel himself, who kills him, blows up his brain inside his head, and it's very gruesome. Meanwhile, Sarah and Evelyn reconnect and try and figure out what's been going on with Adam, because neither of them know that Adam is an alternate. Did I mention that Dave's body is found on the 14th? Dave's body is found on the 14th. And also around midnight on the 14th, the Intruder communicates with Adam again. We don't see this conversation, but Adam later recounts it with Thatcher, claiming that he was visited by God himself. Which is probably not true. He was probably visited by Gabriel, though. Unless he thinks the Intruder is God, in which case, yikes. And on the night of January 16th, Gabriel talks to Thatcher in his sleep, compelling him to visit the house of Adam Murray, where he finds him halfway transformed into an alternate, takes him in, and starts questioning him, and that's where Adam reveals that he was communicated with by God, but it's probably actually Gabriel because he's the Mandela prophet, and something bad is going to come out of that, but we haven't seen it yet. And that's it for the main story, but we do have a couple small segments that take place in the 2010s/2020s. Firstly, in 2015, a Vine compilation is made that includes found footage, or just footage gathered from the Murray household. And then, likely between the years 2022 and the present day of 2024, a TikTok is uploaded to the account All Dark, All Gone that appears to be corrupted by the alternates in some way. So clearly the alternates are still active even in the 20s. The 2020s. That still feels so weird to say. And that is the entire story of the Mandela Catalog, presented in chronological order. Now back to you in the studio, me. This series is very impressive to me for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, it is a very powerful example of the potential of online horror. It combines so many elements that I love about horror. I love cosmic horror, or horror where the true terror of it comes from the twisting or the perversion of religious themes. Horror is meant to scare you and make you uncomfortable, and Satan replacing Jesus as the basis of Christianity definitely hits both of those notes for me. I also love that this series delves into the uncanny valley, or the idea of these creatures that may look human on first look, but are twisted and stretched just slightly to where they set off a fight or flight response in me. I love horror involving stuff that looks human, but either implicitly or explicitly is not human, and yet somehow we always know. It's also a really well-told story. We are drip-fed certain ideas and events, and we are meant to piece them together like I just did. This is something that can only be done this well in the space of online horror. Fans of the Mandela Catalog for years have gotten to theorize on the connections between characters and events and try and plot things out in the greater timeline of this story. It's not only horrifying, but it's engaging, and it opens itself up for its audience to try and interpret. I also love that as the series has gone on, Alex has evolved himself as a creator and as a filmmaker. This series initially began as a prime example of analog horror. Just a series of still images, sound effects, and VHS static. And then we upgraded to dashcam footage and digital photos. The series then began to incorporate some live action sequences made with animation. until eventually we started getting these very stylized live-action sequences. All of this really feels in line with the aesthetic of the series, and it showcases how Alex has evolved and how his creative process and creative team have also evolved. And now I also want to posit a few predictions for where I think the Mandela Catalog is going to go in the future, because it wouldn't be a video about the Mandela Catalog if I didn't come up with some theories that get disproved in the next episode. Based on Volume 5, I do think that the Department of Temporal Phenomena is going to play a big role going forward. We haven't seen much of them, but I think that that's about to change. I especially think we'll be seeing more of Agent J. Booker, who is the only agent so far that we have a name for, and I think that's by design. And I also think we'll be seeing more of N as well, of course. See, it was theorized way back in the early days of the Mandela Catalog that the Department of Temporal Phenomena may have been on the side of the alternates. Maybe they were working with the alternates directly or just helpless to stop them like the police were. But based on what little information we get about them in Volume 5, I don't think that that's the case. They appear to be on the scene whenever there's alternate activity, trying to gather as much information as possible on this adversary. And maybe, just maybe, they'll find enough clues on how to deal with them. And of course that leads to the big question, how on earth are these characters that we've seen even gonna stop the alternates, if that's even possible at this point? See, of course, the Christian in me wants to believe that ultimately God is gonna come down in like a chariot of fire and smite the alternates with a wave of his hand, but I don't believe that that's where the story is leading. I still to this day firmly believe that Adam is being set up as the only hope of humanity against the alternates. And I still don't know how, because it seems at every step he appears to fall right in line with Gabriel's plan. And there are clearly still alternates in the 2020s, so I really don't know how this is going to shake up. The Mandela Catalog is probably my favorite online horror series in general, and one of my favorite examples of modern horror as a whole. And so this spooky season, I wanted to talk about this horror story that I love so much. I had a poll in my community posts a while back on whether I should talk about the Mandela Catalog or the Walton Files for this Halloween, and you all chose the Mandela Catalog, and I'm glad you did. And if you want to participate in future polls in the future regarding what content I decide to make, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I drop a video or do a poll like this. And I'm just glad that we live in the real world where Satan has not deposed Jesus as the center figure of Christianity, and that diseases like MAD are not a thing. Where hearing everything that I've just said would slowly infect you, visiting you in your dreams, tormenting you relentlessly, day and night, driving you insane. Everything that I've talked about in this video could be forbidden knowledge. But it's a good thing that it's not real.
I am inside your home. Special thanks to the patrons. She, Happy the Hive, and the top tier patrons are D and Zoe.